Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm, and you are watching first part of What If Naruto Was Broken and Trained by Fem-Kyuubi. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Konoha's streets, people were sleeping in their houses with their kids. Everything was quiet, the air was cold, and everything was fine at midnight. However, there was a profound sense of dread in the air, and every shinobi in Konoha could feel it despite the serene and tranquil surroundings. Perhaps it was because of the full moon that adorned Konohagakure's skies, which was evocative of the moon that emerged during the notorious massacre that caught the entire shinobi world off guard. However, superstitious people may have claimed that the moon goddess herself was guarding them. How foolish they were. If a god was represented by the moon that night, it would have been the Aim no Hitotsu no Kami, a ruthless entity that was the embodiment of death and pure evil that, but for the Sage of Six Paths, nearly brought about the end of the world. Sitting above a post in the center of Konoha's ninja district, this teen was prepared for what was about to happen. Just like Uchiha Itachi had done before him, but unlike his predecessor, he did not set out to destroy a clan that had betrayed him. On the contrary, his upcoming acts were the epitome of insanity. They lacked any noble motivations and were the result of pure rage, vengeance, and insanity. When the teenager felt two Anbus making their nightly rounds approach him, he slowly got to his feet. A few feet away from him, a tall, muscular male Anbu wearing a turtle mask soon materialized. "I'm sorry, but I would have to ask you to come with us. You are in the direct violation of the current curfew set by the current Hokage," he said as his partner, a very healthy woman with long black hair that reached her waist and a fox Anbu mask, appeared next to him. After a few seconds of tilting his head to the side as though considering his response, the man finally said, "And why might I ask of you, is there a curfew, Ms. Fox?" Before the fox-masked Anbu could respond, her partner interrupted her. "That is none of your concern, now come with us." "Oh," was the last thing the turtle Anbu said before his head was severed. His body went limp on the ground, and blood started to flow out of it. The fox-masked Anbu gazed at her partner's now decapitated body in disbelief. She felt an arm over her shoulder before she could even react, and for the first time in her lengthy Anbu career, she could honestly say that she was afraid. It was unsettling that she didn't even witness her partner's murder. In fact, she didn't even feel him until he wrapped his left arm around her shoulder. Her partner's killer was standing right next to her. She started to say, but was interrupted again by the teenager who had just murdered her partner. For a brief moment, the fox Anbu snapped out of her and looked at the man bewildered as she reached for her tanto in an attempt to divert his attention. "Shush, stay quiet, today is such a nice evening, you see, and really you and your partner there," she points at the headless corpse, "are really ruining the festivities, don't you see?" she asks. The man interrupted her again with a sigh and started counting down with his right hand. "Festivities? There is no festi," he said, looking up around the village and saying, "Just look at the village and wait." The fox-masked Anbu took advantage of this gap and swiftly withdrew her tanto, ready to strike and saturated with Kaden chakra, ready to exact revenge on her fallen comrade. 5. The man moved to the side of the female Anbu to avoid her charge, yawning without even looking. 4. He uttered as a tanto, 1, in the Anbu style appeared in his left hand. 3, he said, but this time his voice carried a tinge of excitement as he cut down, cutting the Anbu's hands off her forearms. 2, before she could even scream in agony, he slashed, severed, and stabbed a number of critical points in her body with a few fast, accurate, and nearly reflexive movements. 1, he uttered as the now dead Anbu's body hit the earth. He joyfully yelled, 0, for everyone to hear. Then there was quiet. There was still more silence after this. "What the hell?" the man asked, looking around with a drop of perspiration on his head. "Did I mess up my timing or something? Because I swear to God I'll kill EV." He was unable to finish his sentence because a series of explosions started to happen all over the city, taking him by surprise and causing him to fall off the post and land face first on the ground. No area of the village was spared from the recent attack, with the exception of where he was at the moment. Face down on the ground beneath one of the posts in the ninja district and the Hokage monuments, he stayed still as hundreds of thousands of explosive tags started to detonate, destroying various parts of the city: the ninja district, the clan district, the civilian district, the market district, and the red light district. The man who was lying on the ground started laughing uncontrollably as the explosions subsided, oblivious to the obvious amount of dust and rubble that was accumulating around him. "Bawahahahaha, this is great. I've spent, years planning this, and I didn't even get to see it in the end. Ha 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 ha, this is great. Ha 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 ha. This is great. H. The man slowly stood up, dusting himself as he started flaring his own chakra. The man uttered the words. "Man," that was a good laugh, before sensing a large number of chakra signatures converge on him. With his tanto in hand, the man declared, "Well, then let the festival begin," and began to run frantically in the direction of the region with the highest number of chakra signatures. Change of scene alongside Hakate Kakashi. How did this happen? Even with the renowned Sharingan, Hitaki Kakashi was barely avoiding the barrage of attacks directed at him as he frantically attempted to avoid the exact attack of his attacker. Flashback. Just a short while ago he was quite concerned about his friends and their teams because they were in Konoha when the explosions occurred, so he and 7 other Jonins made the decision to go investigate the only location in the ninja district that had not experienced any explosions. Nevertheless, as a ninja, Kakashi was too busy killing or apprehending the attacker to worry about the others. There was a faint smell of blood in the air as Kakashi and the Jonins made their way to their destination. After a short while, they reached a scene that will live on in their memories, or at least in Kakashi's. Play. BGM. The executioner's Yumaniko no Naku Koro. A man who appeared to be in his mid-teens was standing there. Kakashi gazed at the teenager with the blonde, spiky hair that looked so familiar. In the middle of at least 60 different ninjas' bodies, ranging from genin to anbu, the man was standing there giggling. Beneath the man's feet, they were all mercilessly killed. Kakashi looked more closely at the teenager, who was dressed entirely in black, with jeans, a shirt, shinobi sandals, and an open zip hoodie over his shirt, too. Not only did the teen have blood all over it, but the most unsettling aspect was the 2 blue eyes with a crimson ring in the center that peered out from the mosque's eyes. 4. The teen was also wearing a white mask with a spooky smile. 3. The same damned blue eyes that seemed to be peering into the very existence of the well-known copycat nin. A young Jonin in his early 20s roared, "You monster!" and ran frantically in the direction of the man with the kunai. The man appeared to be unaware of the other man's presence as he stood motionless, gazing at the imitation nin. The Jonin was unable to scream, "Die! Yo!" because his target swiftly flicked his wrist, tanto in hand, cutting the unfortunate Jonin in half with a swift flick. With a simple flick of his wrist, the man killed one of their own with ease, leaving the other Jonins stunned. Kakashi was the first to snap out of shock, but before he could issue any commands, the man vanished in a flash of superhuman speed, killing 2 other Jonins by slashing them in the jugulars. As soon as the group had recovered from their shock, Kakashi pulled up the leaf hide covering his eye to show his implanted dujutsu, the Sharingan, in an attempt to track the man's movements. One of the surviving Jonins, a bald-headed man in his early 40s, started learning some hand signs. "Raiden! Jion!" he screamed out, intending to strike the enemy who was coming toward him, but the masked man vanished once more. The man's outline was barely visible to Kakashi before he appeared behind the Jonin firing the Raiden. Jion and used his tanto to slit the man's throat open with his sword drawn. The masked man swiftly aimed the now dead Jonin's head at the lone female Jonin in the group who attempted to ambush him while the jutsu was still active. The B-rank jutsu swiftly impaled her in the chest, making this a fatal error for the Jonin. With the exception of Kakashi, the last surviving Jonin chose to take advantage of the brief moment to perform some hand seals while leaping back farther away from the man. "Kaden! Gokakyu no Jutsu!" the Jonin screamed before launching a huge ball of roaring fire in the direction of the teenager. "Shinkuken!" was whispered by the masked man as he swung his tanto, slicing the fireball in half after giving him an indifferent look. The Jonin watched in disbelief as the fire he spewed was cut in half. Unfazed, the man proceeded to go through some hand signals once more before concluding with a tiger seal. "Kaden! Zukoku!" he said before a massive firestorm spread destruction in all directions toward the man wearing the mask. To the Jonin's surprise once more, however, the flames extinguished before they could even reach the man. The man resumed going through some hand seals, but before he could finish, another man materialized in front of him and used the tanto to stab him in the heart in a single fluid motion. All of this took place in 45 seconds as the masked man withdrew his tanto from the other Jonin's chest. Kakashi stood alertly. He had no time to be surprised because he was up against a rival who was just as quick as his former sensei, Namikaze Minato. Then, before charging in, the man gave Kakashi another glance with those soul-piercing blue eyes. With his Sharingan flaring, Kakashi leapt back instantly, narrowly avoiding a slash that was intended for his chest. He immediately responded by hurling a few kunais, some of which had tags indicating that they were explosives. The man was caught in the explosion after deflecting the kunais but noticing the tags a little too late. Kakashi used the explosion as a diversion and immediately performed some hand seals. Sweden. Suiryuden no jutsu, he said, launching the enormous water dragon in the direction of the masked attacker. Regretfully, the man jumped sideways to avoid it. The man was shocked to the bone by Raiden Chakra as a result of a follow-up jutsu that Kakashi employed, but he was unaware of the small amount of water that had accumulated from the previous attack. As it was his turn to defend himself, the man muttered under his breath, Sweden. Suiryuden no jutsu followed by Raiden. Jabashi impressive. Kakashi charged in and instantly engaged his attacker in a taijutsu duel. Kakashi managed to land a hard landing on the man despite his newly discovered lethargy following the Raiden jutsu. The silver-haired Junin's body was covered in dozens of cuts and gashes as a result of multiple slashes that either dodged or countered every punch or kick he threw. After the brief battle, Kakashi retreated and watched his opponent's Tonto, Wind Chakra Huh? Damn, you just had to make this harder for me. Despite his composed exterior, Kakashi was already feeling anxious, wondering why he wouldn't have killed 7 Jonins in a matter of seconds and was so fast now that he learns that the man has a wind affinity. It seems as though the man was the worst possible opponent for him. His instincts began to scream for him to move as soon as he started to pull away. The man's previously displayed sluggishness vanished as he instantly used Kawarimi to avoid a quick stab to the back that was intended for his left lung. As Kakashi kept trying to maintain his distance and look for even the smallest openings, which, regrettably, his opponent wasn't giving him, he shuddered at the thought of that blow. Kakashi threw some shuriken and kunai at the man while maintaining his distance. He even used a Kaiden Gokaku no Jutsu. The man just avoided the kunais, deflected the shurikens, and cut the fireball in half. Looking around, Kakashi noticed that the man in front of him was motionless and appeared bored, as though he were daring him to move. The teenager swiftly created a pair of cage bunchins, both of which started going through some hand seals, and Kakashi could only grit his teeth at his conceit. Sweden. Suiryuden no Jutsu, uttered one clone as it hurled another water dragon at the man in the mask before vanishing. The other clone uttered the words, Kaiden Goryuka no Jutsu, before launching a massive fireball in the shape of a dragon at the teenager and adopting the same religion. In order to avoid the attack, the masked man swiftly used Kawarimi and moved to stand next to one of the nearby corpses. But he didn't understand that the Kaiden and Sweden jutsu were merely a diversion. Everyone in the vicinity was covered in a blanket of warm steam as the two jutsus struck the same spot, and the scorching hot Goryuka no Jutsu dissolved the Suiryuden no Jutsu. The masked man was startled when a pair of hands materialized beneath the ground and held him in place as he looked around for the copy nin. The man muttered, "Shit," as he started to hear 1,000 birds chirping and rapidly approaching him. Kakashi screamed, "Chidori," and pierced the man's chest, only to have it swiftly vanish in a cloud of smoke. Kakashi's eye widened, barely registering the event before he was knocked back a few feet by a sharp jab that connected to his face. He had no time to recover as the enemy pursued him right away. Back-end flash before his opponent chose to halt his attack. The copy nin had to dodge and avoid the blows for a few more minutes, which seemed like an eternity. Kakashi didn't take this for granted and immediately leapt back a few feet. Kakashi was given a brief opportunity by his opponent to consider his options for dealing with the enemy, but as soon as the masked teen in front of him started speaking, the process came to an abrupt end. The words, "Konbawa Kakashi-sensei," combined with that too familiar upbeat melody, were enough to chill Kakashi to the bone. Naruto pointed to the heap of bodies encircling the two of them and said, Now sensei, no need to go spacing out on me, you need to liven up. Enjoy the festival we're having today, or would you rather go home early and sleep like the rest of them?" The silver-haired man simply stared at the masked blonde in front of him. Sensei, I feel a lot of people coming here, so I want you to follow me so we can play some more? Let's meet at the top of the heads, nay? Bring everyone with you there, cause the festival is just beginning," said Naruto before disappearing into a leaf whirl. Kakashi mumbled, panting, "And Naruto, wait. Tisk damn." He used Shunshin as he attempted to gather his thoughts. He currently only has 15% of his chakra remaining due to severe wounds. Kakashi quickly reached into his pouch and took a food pill to restore his chakra to roughly 50%. As his backup group of Jonins, led by his longtime rival Maida Guy, arrived, he took a short break. As he walked up to his opponent, Guy questioned, "Kakashi, what happened here?" Kakashi looked at Guy after recharging some of his chakra. "We need to head towards the Hokage monument now, and I'll explain what happened to you when we get there," he said, using Shunshin to reach the monument right away. Monument to Hokage alongside Naruto with his tanto sheathed and sealed in his left hand. The man now known as Naruto stood tall above his father, the Yondaime Hokage. As he started to flare his chakra and concentrate some of it in his throat to boost his voice, Naruto remarked, "Well, then I guess it's time for some proper introductions." With a hint of amusement in his voice, Naruto declared, "I am Namikaze Uzumaki Nanaya Naruto." Damn, that was a mouthful. The Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko, the sacrifice of Konoha, the legacy of the fourth, the heir to the Namikaze and Uzumaki clan, and the next head of the Nanaya clan, and above all else. I am... Naruto paused for a moment as he was surrounded by at least 200 of Konoha's best shinobis. He recognized a few faces in the crowd, including his peers from a few years ago and their senseis, but chose to ignore them for the time being. As I was saying, I am a monster, was interrupted by a harsh, icy voice that he was all too familiar with. The old man, who was wearing his cage robes and was the current Hokage, the leader of Konoha, moved forward from the crowd to let Naruto pass. Naruto gave him a close look. Naruto said in a mockingly cheerful tone, "Akambawa Hokage-sama, nice to have you join us. Are you enjoying the festivities too? Nay, Danzo-tan?" "Silence, demon," was the old man's stern response, and he snapped his fingers to call 100 of his own Nei Anbus to the scene. The blonde couldn't resist whistling. That was really awesome. To the surprise of every Konoha nin in the vicinity, a number of hooded figures suddenly appeared behind Naruto, making them all tense almost immediately. "But I think I can pull it off better," Naruto said, snapping his fingers for everyone to hear. "Oh, and as I was saying, Danzo-san, I am Konoha's reckoning. I am vengeance. I am the inevitable. I am this village's death." Naruto's voice was so deep and cold that it sent shivers down the spine of the old wark hawk. He gave the current Kage a cold look, his eyes glowing unnaturally, and he stared as if he was looking at the old man's very existence from behind his mask. The old Kage couldn't help but break his normally stoic and cold demeanor when he summoned his tanto and slowly unsheathed it, signaling the start of a full-scale battle. "Or wa Satsujin," the blonde teenager said icily, "Or wa Satsujin," as he and his friends charged forward, prepared to destroy Konoha. But before this battle even started, let's all take a moment to reflect. Now that we know what's coming, let's go back in time. If you can, how did this all happen? How did the legacy of the fourth turn out this way? Why is the supposed hero of Konoha standing against what it was supposed to protect? To understand what happened, we must go back to the beginning, or rather, the end, of the lives of one Namikaze Minato and Kushina Uzumaki. October 10th, Anbu Safe House, Konoha's covert delivery room. A man was standing in the delivery room holding his wife's hand. The man has spiky blonde hair whose bangs went till his jaw. He had slightly tanned skin and cerulean blue eyes. He was wearing a long-sleeved dark blue shirt with a symbol of a red whirlpool emblazoned in the shoulders, paired up with dark blue standard jonin pants. The man was Namikaze Minato, known as the Yondaime Hokage, Konoha no Kiroi Senko, and currently he was having a very bad day, and I mean a really bad day. Minato himself expected that today would be a great day. He never even thought of the possibility that it was going to be his last. He was excited and happy that his beautiful red-haired goddess of a wife Kushina was giving birth to their first baby, a boy who they decided to name Naruto after the character from his sensei Jiraiya's novel. Although, he was lying if said he wasn't worried about the delivery, since his wife was currently imprisoning the Kyuubi and the seal holding it in place would weaken the moment she gave birth. But what are the chances of someone using that to their advantage and freeing the beast to destroy Konoha? His worries were soon replaced by happiness. Heck, he couldn't think of any time he was happier than then moment Kushina gave birth to their new pride and legacy. He was finally a dad for Kami's sake. It made him smile that the kid even inherited his blonde hair. He just knew the kid would break hearts in the future. It was definitely the happiest moment of his life. He was too happy, in fact, that he let his guard down for a few seconds. And in the end, it only took a few seconds for this perfect day to go down the drain. The spiky-haired blonde was glaring at the figure in front of him, a masked man wearing a black cloak that covered most of his body. The man had managed to kill all the Anbus guarding the place, break through all the barriers he set around the hideout, sneak in, kill the midwives Sarutobi Bawako and Taji, and grab his newborn son Naruto, who was now being held as a hostage. Yep, this day couldn't possibly get any worse. Move away from the host or the child dies, the masked man said. Minato said, "Calm down," as he prepared to respond to whatever the masked man did. "I am completely at ease," the man said. "Maybe you should calm down, Minato," as he threw the newborn up in the air. With his kunai already drawn, the man leapt up to impale Naruto, but Minato quickly grabbed the baby boy away from the masked man. But as he did so, Minato noticed the detonating explosive tags hidden beneath the blanket that was wrapped around him. Seeing that he and his son were safe, the Yondaime Hokage used the Hiraishin once more to teleport to the Namikaze compound, where he and Kushina currently resided. Minato put his son on a bed and said, "You'll be safe here." He smiled at his son and disappeared in a flash of yellow light, ready to save his wife from the masked man. After teleporting to different places, Minato eventually found his wife Kushina in a forest outside of Konoha, and he also spotted the enormous demon fox that was going to kill her with a sudden burst of speed. Minato grabbed his wife and escaped the attack, appearing atop a tree carrying her in a bridal position, which reminded him of the time he had saved her from those Kumo nins years before. "How is Naruto doing?" the former Jinchuriki said, her voice already weak and ragged. Minato looked down at his wife and decided to hold the pursuit against the masked man. He quickly used Hiraishin to teleport back to his house and place Kushina next to Naruto. "Yeah, don't worry Kushi, he's in a safe place now," he said, then turned his head back and glared at the masked man who was standing in the distance. "Minato, you have to stop that man, and the Kyuubi, they're heading to Konoha," she said, panting, visibly weakened. "Minato, I'm grateful, however, go now before teleporting off," Minato said. "I'll be back soon," wearing his trademark white coat with flame-like motifs around the edges and the fourth Hokage kanji proudly written vertically down the back. On top of the Hokage monument, Konohagakure, unaware that his son would stand there in the future, not to save Konoha as he was about to, but to destroy it. Minato appeared on top of his head in the Hokage monument. He turned to face the Kyuubi, who stopped at its path of destruction and turned to face him. "He sensed me," Minato uttered, fully aware that the beast was now under the masked man's control. The beast started to charge chakra at its mouth, creating a huge sphere of death that would undoubtedly destroy anything it came into contact with. Minato saw this and used some hand seals. The beast then fired its Bijudama in his direction, and Minato grabbed one of his tri-pronged kunai to create the Jikukan Kekai, a space and time barrier that diverted the attack by sending it far away from the village. Before he could even celebrate, his instincts kicked in, and he spun around, ready to kill the masked man who appeared behind him. The masked man grabbed Minato's hand after his attack missed, saying, "You'll have to beat me before you deal with the Kyuubi." The man started using a strange jutsu that attempted to absorb Minato, and Minato, predictably, used the Hiraishin and teleported away. The masked man said, "Tisk," he jumped away, "have to suck him in quicker the next time," and then vanished into a whirlpool. Destroyed the safe house. Yep, it was official. This was the worst day ever, Minato thought as he suddenly realized that he was fighting against a man who could use space-time jutsu, knew how to control the Kyuubi's seal, and knew how to avoid and break the barriers around Konoha. He was fighting against Uchiha Madara, which was a huge thrill, but wait, who the hell was he glaring at the moment? Oh, and now the masked man was discussing war and peace or something like that, and the more he talked, the more Minato had to think of how to shove a Rasengan up the man's ass for this stunt he was attempting to pull. Minato readied himself to attack as the masked man took out and wore a pair of handcuffs with a really long chain between them. After a few seconds, both men charged at each other. Minato, holding on to his tri-pronged kunai, stabbed it forward, passing through the masked man right into the chain of his cuffs, which the man immediately used to try and bind the blonde with. Seeing what was about to happen, Minato used the Hiraishin to teleport a few feet away from the man to where one of his tri-pronged kunai was located. Minato stared at his opponent for a moment. "So he can't be intangible and touch me at the same time. The best time to attack is the moment before he touches me," the Cage thought as he began devising a new plan of attack. Minato, with kunai in hand, decided to once more charge at his opponent. The masked man obliged by running towards the Hokage, hands up front, waiting for one moment in order to beat the Cage to the ground. When he was only a few feet away from his opponent, Minato used his left hand to throw his tri-pronged kunai at the masked man's head while he charged a Rasengan. In his right, as expected, the tri-pronged kunai passed through the man's head. Thinking he was victorious, the man for one split second turned off his intangibility in order to attack the blue-eyed Cage. The masked man declared, "I win," but the Cage teleported behind him to the exact location of the tri-pronged kunai. The Yondaime yelled, "Rasengan," and slammed the spinning ball of chakra at the man in the mask. Minato hit his opponent and instantly placed Hiraishin's Jutsu Shinki on his back before the man was able to leap away and flee from the Cage. The Yondaime's right hand was placed in his chest, and the masked man said, "You got me," as his left arm fell to the ground in a mangled heap of flesh before the man could blink. Minato Namikaze was in front of him. stabbing him in the stomach with one of the man's tri-pronged kunai. The masked man then looked down at his chest and noticed an odd-looking seal. A Keiyaku Fuin, are you attempting to violate my Kyuubi contract? As of now you no longer control it. No wonder you're the Yondaime Hokage. Not only did you manage to wound me, but you also took away the Kyuubi from me, the man in the mask said as he leapt up onto a nearby tree branch and looked down on the cage. But don't worry, I'll get the Kyuubi again. The masked man boldly declared, I am the ruler of the world. I have many means at my disposal. As a swirling distortion centered on his eye began to form, absorbing the man into the void and disappearing from the battlefield, Minato could only stare at him as the very fabric of time and space began to bend to his will. As Minato heard the Kyuubi's loud roar reverberating throughout Konoha, he thought, that man, he wasn't lying. Minato then teleported away. The battlefield. Kachiyose no Jutsu. Minato screamed, calling forth the giant toad boss Gamabunta. The toad landed on top of the Kyuubi, allowing everyone on the battlefield to get a good look at it. It was dull, rust red, with red markings on his eyes, lips, and chest, as well as a scar on his left eye. The Konoha ninjas cheered when they saw that the figure on top of the toad was none other than their leader Minato Namikaze. They didn't notice the cage's pained expression as he started to think about what the masked man had said. Before giving the giant toad the order, hold the Kyuubi back for a little while, the cage thought, Kushina, I'm sorry. The toad did his best to comply with the cage's orders, saying, you better hurry up Minato, even I can't hold him back for long. I'll need some time and a lot of chakra to send something this big away. After a few seconds of holding down the Kyuubi, the boss toad finally landed in the ground. As Minato and the Kyuubi disappeared, the toad started pushing down, applying more pressure in an attempt to stop the Kyuubi, who was now charging a Bijudama. Mountains beyond Konoha, the Kyuubi landed on the mountain range and started searching for the person who had brought it here. Still incensed over what had happened earlier, the Kyuubi was desperately trying to vent by looking around. Unfortunately, the Yondaime Hokage had landed close to the Kyuubi, but he wasn't by himself. In his right hand he held his wife Kushina, and in his left he held his son Naruto. Minato, breathing heavily, said, I have to set up a barrier, I'm almost out of chakra. I can. As she started to materialize chakra chains that sprang out of her back and encircled the Kyuubi in an effort to hold it in place. Kushina uttered the weak words, still, fight, fight. Now, Q-chan, please be calm down, she said, Databane, and then coughed up some of her own blood until she could hear her son sobbing. I suppose I woke up, he's up, apologies, Naruto. Minato-kun, I'll draw something Q-chan in and then kill myself. In that manner we can postpone Q-cha's resurrection. The only way I can help you is by coughing. She tried her hardest not to cry or look depressed as she smiled at the love of her life and said, thank you for everything. She turned to face her husband and said, Minato, you don't look like that, don't look depressed. Instead, smile. I'm joyful, today is his birthday, and you love me. With tears welling up in the corners of her eyes, she said, we should be happy, don't cry. At what time? I imagine what our life together would be like if I were still here. I can only imagine happiness. If there is just one thing, I'll be sorry I won't be able to watch Naruto-chan grow up because of that cough. He became even more determined after hearing his wife Minato say, Kushina, you don't have to die with the Kyuubi. If this was going to be the day that he died, he might as well go out doing something for the world. I'll use a Hake Fuin to seal your remaining chakra inside Naruto, and then I'll defeat the Kyuubi alongside him, making use of the Shiki Fujin. But you'll die from that seal, I understand, but I can permanently seal half of the Kyuubi's power with it. I'll use the Hake Fuin to seal Naruto in the other half. Kushina, I understand what you're going to say. I know that being a Jinchuriki can be difficult, but I have faith in our son. I entrust my life to him because, as the host, he will shape the future. Kushina attempted to respond, but she stopped when she realized that this would be her final time with her husband, Minato. But as Minato performed the accompanying hand seals, she said, I, Hitsuji, you, Inu, Ne, Tori, Uma, I. Have faith in this child, Kushina. After all, he's our son. Namikaze. Minato clapped his hand, sealing his faith. Minato uttered the words, Shiki Fujin, as a figure of death itself materialized behind him, prepared to carry out the task of sealing the Kyuubi in return for his mortal soul. With a sorrowful grin, Minato turned to face his wife and said, I want you to promise me when he attempts to control the Kyuubi, I want you to assist him. However, he is our son. I don't want him to put up with Q-chan, in order to maintain the equilibrium between vice. For our nation, our community, you shouldn't sacrifice yourself for me, and there's no reason to sacrifice him for that? Without responding, Minato simply kept staring at her. I am willing to die for my son, he said. That's all I can do for him as a father, he said to her, smiling. The spirit of death pushed its hand into Minato, passing through him and eventually reaching for the bound Kyuubi, who for some unknown reason wasn't struggling. Fuin, Minato said as part of the Kyuubi was ripped away from it and sealed away. Immediately afterwards Minato used the Hake Fuin and began sealing the surprisingly calm and docile Kyuubi into his son. Kushina, who currently kneeling beside Minato, slowly looked up to Kyuubi with a sad smile on her face. Nay, Kyu-chan, I'm sorry. I hope I was unable to fulfill my promise. Naruto can provide it for you. The Kyuubi nodded as if it heard her, then slowly closed its eyes, accepting its fate. While Kushina was speaking to the Biju, Minato had just finished handing the key to the seal to a scroll-like frog named Gamatora. Take it to Jiraiya-sensei and immediately store it inside him. As the frog vanished, Minato started using the Hake Fuin once more, this time sealing some of his and Kushina's chakra into Naruto. Minato, Kushina said weakly as the apparition of death drew out its blade, pulling out the now entwined soul of Minato, and the Kyuubi Kushina turned away as the Shinigami swung down its blade, ending the life of her beloved husband Namikaze Minato. Aware that her time was running out, the now crying Kushina crawled towards Naruto, petting his head and looking at him with tears streaming down her face before leaning down and kissing his forehead. No matter what path you choose, Kushina said, embracing her husband's lifeless body and sobbing for a few minutes before coughing up more blood. I'll always be there for you. Additionally, look after Kyu-chan, who can be a little problematic, but you two will get along, I'm sure of it, and never forget that I will always. Kushina Uzumaki died with a satisfied smile on her face after saying, I love you. A few hours following the Kyuubi battle, the office of the Hokage. One of the most well-known and feared shinobi in the elemental nations, Sarutobi Hiruzen was also known as the Shinobi no Kami. He was a student of both Shodem Hokage Senju Hiroshima and Niidaime Hoki Senju Tobarama, and he was also the teacher of the renowned Sannin of Konoha. Hiruzen, the now re-elected Hokage of Konohagakure, was in his mid-50s, with gray hair and a beard, wrinkles, and liver spots all over his face. He was the epitome of an old man, and he wore a haori over a red kimono tied with a white sash, as well as the Hokage hat with the kanji of fire on it. The words, Kami damn it, this is why I retired, I'm seriously too old for this shit, were spoken by Sarutobi as though his now deceased successor had just been through one of the worst days of his life. Where should he begin? Well, he saw the Yondaime Hokage and his wife Kushina die in front of him, but thank God they were able to seal the damn fox before they died, or else Konoha would be in deeper shit. To top it all off, his trusty pipe was destroyed during the attack, and Kami forbid he needed a good drag right now. The Kyuubi went on a rampage, killing a lot of Konoha's ninjas and civilians, and let's not forgetting the property damage. In fact, the only district that was fortunately spared was the Red Light District. Yes, his mental checklist of the events of the day kept getting better and better. Oh, and did he forget to mention the different members of the Shinobi Council bitching and acting like children in front of him? This day was just fun-tastic. Upon closer examination, the woman appeared to have long, untamed, spiky brown hair with red fang markings on her cheeks and over her eyes. She was dressed in the typical Konoha Jonin outfit, which consists of a black suit and a flak jacket. That monster killed my husband, I say we killed at the demon now. Placing the blame on the child would be nonsensical. A man with spiky short black hair, a mustache, and a high-collared outfit responded, Sume-san, as he used his index finger to push his dark glasses up to his eyes. The now famous Inuzuka Sume growled, Shut up, Shibi. You're just saying that because the Aburame clan lost so little in the attack. A big-boned man with long red hair and two purple facial markings on his cheeks, dressed in a samurai-like outfit with the kanji of food in it, said, Now, calm down, Sume-san, we all suffered losses today. Let's all calm down and think about this carefully, he added. Shuza-san, I have to agree with Sume-san, it is better to kill it now before it becomes stronger and possibly attack the village once more. The man, who was dressed in the standard Jonin attire and had long black hair and featureless white eyes, chose to join the conversation. A man with shoulder-length black hair, his bangs hanging in a wave pattern over his forehead, and a mustache similar to Shibi's but thicker, said, But he is just a child. Hiyashi-san, I agree with Shuza-san, we should think about this carefully before we make a decision that we might regret. Like Hiyashi and Sume, he was also wearing the Jonin outfit, which seemed a little dirtier because of the earlier battle. Oh, what do you suggest we do next, Murakumo-san? Hiyashi answered. The man who is now known as Murakumo stopped to reflect for a while, but regrettably, He was unable to think of a suitable answer that would appease everyone. Guess who said, "Mendokusai, and you'll receive a cookie. Why am I even here? This is foolish. Let the child live. Killing him will only unleash the beast on Konoha. He is the container, not the demon." Lazily, the man said. The blonde Jonin with long, spiky hair and a ponytail said, "I agree, it's better if we let the kid live. We need to realize that he is not the fox but the prison that seals it. Do not blame it for the sins of the monster." HN. The head of the Uchiha clan joined the conversation. Uchiha Fugaku, a man with onyx-colored eyes and short black hair that reached his shoulders, had visible creases beneath them, just like his son Itachi, and was dressed in the standard Konoha Jonin uniform. Like the others, he was standing in a corner of the room, acting as though he didn't care about what was happening as far as the man was concerned. As long as this incident didn't impact the clan, he couldn't care less. "I support allowing a child to live. I also suggest that he be put under my tutelage so that I can train him to become Konoha's ideal weapon." "Try to guess who said this one and you'll get another cookie," said the man with the two other elders. The first was an elderly woman in her 50s whose hair was pulled back in a twin bun secured with a hairpin, and who was dressed in a long kimono that was closed with an obi, a jacket, and a sash. He was standing next to her, and he had a perpetual frown on his face, along with his gray hair, a beard, and glasses. His attire was similar to Sarutobi's. "If we put the demon under Danzo's tutelage, Sarutobi, it will help Konoha," the elderly woman stated. "I concur with Danzo and Kohaku," Sarutobi the man with the glasses continued. "If we put the demon under Danzo, we can control it and have the ultimate weapon to protect Konoha." Apart from the current head of the Uchiha clan, the elders and the ninja council continued to quarrel, utterly unaware of the killing intent that was gradually accumulating around the Sandaime. "Remain quiet." Even though he wanted the boy to survive, the Hokage knew that if the majority of the clan heads disagreed with the decision, it might cause internal strife among the Konoha people and possibly spark a civil war. The old man ordered the release of a lot of killing intent. "Yes." The man smirked inwardly as that silenced them all. "First of all, Danzo, despite your ideas, the child will not be put into one of your training facilities to be turned into an emotionless tool." He paused for a moment to allow his words to sink in. "With all the bickering going around, I doubt we'll get to a decision soon." The old warhawk opened his mouth to respond with whatever foolish justification he had. "Understood." Reluctantly, the warhawk backed down and said, "Hi," to the cage, reminding everyone in the room why he is known as Shinobi no Kami. The old man's words released a great deal of killing intent. "Second, I've determined that a vote is the best course of action to address this issue and you all agree to comply. Regardless of how this turns out." The elders and clan leaders nodded their heads in agreement. "Sume, you may take the first vote." The Inuzuka wishes for the demon's death. The Aburame wishes for the boy to live. The Hyuga wishes for its death. The Akamichi wishes for the boy to live. The Nara wishes for the child to live. The Yamanka wishes for the child to live. The Uchiha wishes for the child's death. Kohaku said without regret, "The Elder Council wishes for the demon's death if not under the tutelage of Danzo. As it stands, if it is 4 votes to let the child live, 4 votes to let the child die. Murakumo-san, what is your vote on this matter?" Sarutobi asked the old cage, clearing his throat. Being a ninja, Murakumo was accustomed to making life or death decisions, but he never in his life would have imagined that he would have to make a decision of this magnitude. The head of the Kurama clan closed his eyes and was lost in thought. Feeling the looks of everyone in the room, he now has the vote that will determine Konoha's future. He said, the head of the Kurama, while everyone was still waiting for his choice. "Wishes for the child to live," was his final statement, and he unknowingly gained the respect of one Uzumaki Naruto in the future. With 5 votes for life, and 4 votes for death, I Sarutobi Hiruzen declare that the child is to live. "Inu," the old cage said, snapping his fingers, and an Anbu with silver hair that defied gravity and a dog mask appeared. "Hello, Hokage-sama?" the Anbu inquired. "Bring the child here." A crying blonde baby was in the hands of the man who reappeared 30 seconds after the Anbu nodded and vanished in a flurry of leaves. "Until he reaches the appropriate age, this child will be placed in an orphanage. To make sure no one hurts him, he will also be placed under Anbu surveillance around the clock. This youngster is a hero who is stifling the beast inside of him, not a demon. Additionally, I'm enacting a law that forbids anyone from discussing the child's hidden beast. You understand that breaking this law will result in severe punishment, including death?" The cage looked at everyone in the room and asked, but he quickly stopped when he heard a knock on the door. "Come on in," the elderly man said. The secretary, a woman in her late 20s, stated, "The civilian council is already in the meeting room, Hokage-sama." Meeting dismissed. was the Hokage's statement as the heads of the various clans started to depart. Inu, take care of the child until I get back following the meeting. We'll place him in an orphanage, you understand? Don't let anything happen to him, the elderly man said, focusing on the Anbu. The elderly man grinned and said, Hi Hokage-sama, I will give my life to protect this child, before leaving the room. Sleep well, Naruto, said the masked Anbu, grinning beneath his mask as he gazed at the infant's sleeping form and gave him a gentle pat on the head. Satsujin. A killer's birth after 3 days. The old man known as the Professor was feeling so foolish that he may be going senile because he failed to take into consideration the ignorance and hatred that currently pervaded the hearts of most Konoha residents. 2 Anbu who deliberately told the civilians about Naruto's situation were already personally killed by him. He would later find out that the 2 had lost the majority of their loved ones in the attack. Since the child is only a few days old, there have already been 43 attempts on his life, and the village has been the scene of numerous riots in recent days, all of which have aimed to kill the child for Kami's sake. They should focus on rebuilding the village rather than further destroying it. With a sigh, the elderly man pulled out a fresh pipe, filled it with tobacco, lit it, took a long drag, and then blew out the smoke. He was taking a respite from the mountains of paperwork that had accumulated due to the Kyuubi's attacks and the retarded wishes of the civilians. To be honest, he just wanted to retire and find another successor, but he was willing to stay in this role for a while in order to protect the child. As he took another drag from his pipe, the old man gazed at the photos of the former cages. Minato, I'm sorry, he said, having already started to make arrangements to ensure the child would remain faithful to Konoha, although he was adamantly opposed to his old teammate and friend Shimura Danzo's plan to use the child as a mindless weapon. He was certain that this was a child with boundless potential. The blood of 2 powerful clans, the Namikaze's blood of high affinity for the elements and the Uzumaki's blood of longevity, high chakra reserves, and affinity for Fuinjutsu, flows through his veins, and he has Kyuubi sealed within him. Although he didn't like himself, he had to put the welfare of the village before even the son of his successor, even if that village wishes for the child's death. I'm going to burn in hell, the elderly man said, putting away his pipe and starting to do more paperwork. I'm sorry, he muttered one final time in silence. After 6 years on this sunny and bright day in the village of the Hidden Leaves, the merchants were going about their business of selling goods to the people. The Yamanaka were caring for their flowers, the Inuzuka were caring for their dogs, the Nara were caring for their deer, and the Uchiha and Hyugas were acting as though they had a stick up their ass. The air was warm, but a light breeze helped to cool it down. It was a lovely day to be a good Konohagakure citizen, with the kids playing joyfully in the streets while the adults set up stalls for the upcoming festival. He was dressed in a simple white shirt with the Uzumaki clan symbol emblazoned in the front over a black long-sleeved shirt that was obviously damaged, with tears and bloodstains all over it, and light orange shorts that made the shirt look like it hadn't been cleaned in a long time. 5. This is for everyone who wasn't a 6-year-old child with blonde hair and lightly tanned skin, not to mention his pretty cerulean blue eyes and those 3 whisker-like birthmarks on each cheek. Speaking of the little devil, he was currently being chased around with the threat of pain if he was ever caught while playing with his friends in the alleys of the large village. By friends I mean an enraged mob. You monster, get back here! As he avoided another rock that was thrown at him with the intention of hitting his head, one of his friends yelled, I've been wondering why they're always after me for years. Naruto turned to face the crowd. If there was one positive aspect of this whole chasing him to beat the living shit out of him concept, it was that it helped Naruto develop his stealth, reflexes, pain tolerance, and ability to judge people. He didn't really do anything to them. They just started calling him a demon one day and began beating the living shit out of him whenever they had the chance. He learned a valuable lesson in life from an old man who always wore those funny robes and that strange hat when he was younger. Never fully trust anyone from Konoha. The old man told him that he would protect the little Uzumaki and that everything would be okay, that this would eventually come to pass, and that this would never happen again. However, it didn't, and it only got worse over time. Some may argue that this is excessively severe, but how can he really trust them when they beat him half to death? Show him kindness, then try to beat him to death. Tell them they won't harm him, then try to beat him to death, and then, while he was lying on the ground in a nearly catatonic state, give him food and claim it isn't poisoned, then beat him to death. Yes, even Kami would struggle with trust. A few years ago, Naruto discovered that the man he grudgingly referred to as Gigi because it seemed to please the elderly coot was actually Sarutobi Hiruzen. The current Hokage. Naruto isn't entirely sure why, but he felt uneasy around the elderly man. In addition to his subtle speeches with the underlying messages about how awesome it was to be the Hokage and how one must sacrifice oneself for Konoha, his warm and kind smiles, which he always wore when he was with him, felt forced and fake. Additionally, the man yapped about some "wolf fire" nonsense, which was the equivalent of putting up a "we want you" poster, telling him to serve and sacrifice himself for his nation without hesitation. Naruto knew the old man had ulterior motives, so why was he being so kind? What could the man want from him? The Kami-dam Hokage had everything the Uzumaki didn't, and the man had the respect and love of his people if the man so desired. He could easily influence the masses to stop beating the living daylights out of him. The old man is in charge of an army of ninjas who have the power to kill him if he messes with him. Most of them are actually willing to do so in order to complete the Yondaimi's work. He would like to show his disgust towards the old man, but there is a very small obstacle that prevents him from doing so. Why would he even do that for a man named the professor, who was incredibly stupid? For now, he chose to keep smiling and pretending that he believed what the old man was telling him. "I'll become Hokage Daibao my ass." That is assuming he survives actually messing with the man himself, who has been through 3 shinobi wars. The old man could kill him before he can blink. "Goddamn, quit avoiding you jerk." This man, a ninja, threw a kunai wrapped with an explosive tag. Yes, a kunai with an explosive tag. At a freaking 6-year-old. Fuck, the child thought, grateful that the kunai missed him but that the explosive tag found its target, sending his body flying. This was shouted by another of his friends. The kid swore again in his head as he realized that the Anbu's turtle and fox, who were supposed to be protecting him, weren't the only ones who actually did their job of keeping him safe. He fell to the ground with a loud thump, bleeding and hurt, and looked up towards the rooftops, spotting a few of the Anbus who were supposed to be watching over him. Naruto made a valiant attempt to stand up, but his efforts were cut short when he felt excruciating pain in his legs. He looked back and saw something that made his eyes widen. 2 disgusting stone spikes were impaling his legs. He looked around and saw that the mob was slowly encircling him, and he closed his eyes slowly, accepting his fate. He had long since learned that the mob would leave him alone if he didn't struggle or cry out, but this time, quite the opposite occurred. After being fretched for about 30 minutes, 2 kunais quickly became stuck in his forearms, pinning him face first on the ground. One man said, "Wait, watch this." Before long, Naruto felt like a porcupine with numerous pricks all over his body, as if someone were stabbing him with needles. However, it didn't hurt until the man knelt next to him and touched one of the needles. The blonde let out a scream as he started to experience unbearable pain throughout his body. As the ninja caused the demon to scream out, the crowd laughed. The man grinned and kept sending Raiden chakra on various needles throughout the demon's body, attacking and damaging his nerves. Seeing that the 2 pinning hands were loosening up, he stabbed 2 more kunais at the child's hands. As he felt more and more of the Raiden chakra flowing through him, Naruto continued to scream out, closing his eyes as tears began to flow out of them. The crowds finally heard his quiet sobs, which only made them laugh more. In a derisive tone, one said, "Oh, look, the demon's crying." Another person remarked, "Look, it's trying to act like it's human." "You demon brat, you deserve to suffer. You have no right to cry," a disgusted female voice said. Don't cry, Naruto thought to himself, but the torture wasn't really helping as he screamed in agony and started crying again. Naruto gritted his teeth and tried desperately to stop his sobs because he hated being so weak and pounded by these people. The ninja got up after 30 minutes of electrocution, pulled out the kunais, and then grabbed Naruto's now limp body with stone spikes before throwing him into the crowd for more beatings and stabbings. Naruto opened his now bruised eyes as he saw a man with a sword approach him, but his vision was blurry and he missed what the man looked like. "And with this the demon is slain," the man declared, drawing his sword and driving it deep into the ground, piercing Uzumaki Naruto's heart. Naruto let out a cry of agony as his vision grew blurry, and before long, he was embraced by death. Hospital in Konoha. When I opened my eyes and looked up at the familiar white ceiling, I could only see black scribbles all over the white canvas, as if someone had a marker and scribbled all over it. The first thing he noticed when I woke up was the strong smell of disinfectant in the air. I thought I was back in the hospital, but something felt off. I tried to get up, but it took a few minutes because those damn villages did so much damage this time. I looked around and saw that the strange lines were everywhere, even on my own skin. I was curious about what this line was, so I slowly moved my hand and tried to draw a line diagonally from my elbow to my forearm, but before I could do so, I felt a sense of dread, as if there was some kind of primal fear screaming at me to not draw the line. I decided it would be best to follow my instincts for the time being, so I slowly withdrew my hand back. I started feeling sick as I looked around more and noticed more points and lines. Ag! I gripped my head as a powerful wave of vertigo struck. Itai! I cried aloud again as my vision began to wane. Gradually I closed my eyes, lay back on the bed, and attempted to fall asleep in the hopes that the pain would subside. The mindscape. I am not sure where I was, but I felt strangely at peace. I opened my eyes as a warm breeze blew over me, and I rubbed my eyes while yawning. I pushed myself up slowly and started to look around, and I must admit that I was quite surprised by what I saw. I was sitting on a grassy hilltop overlooking a large green field full of various flowers, and as I looked up at the sky, I felt as though I could not find the right words. I was looking at the night sky, which was a mixture of light green and dark blue, with clouds floating around freely, aloof as they are, and stars twinkling with light blue and purplish lights. 6. Beautiful, I said with all of my heart, because this was truly the most beautiful sight I have ever seen, even better than the view atop the Hokage monuments. Oya, what's in here? A very feminine voice said behind me, and I tensed up, turned around, and blushed at what I saw. The first time I saw someone so beautiful that no one in the village could compare to her, not even the snake woman, the cat Anbu, or that woman with the red eyes. She stood about 5 feet 4 inches tall, with gorgeous white skin, and I started to look all over her body, taking in her heart-shaped face and her soft-looking lips. Her long crimson hair that reached her calves and flowed with the slight breeze that surrounded us both drew my attention, but she also has CC cup breasts, which are tight and plump behind, along with the ideal curves to match. 7. For some reason, seeing her made me feel nostalgic, as though I had known her for a very long time. As I allowed my gaze to wander further, I also saw that she was wearing a black kimono with a golden sash in the center in addition to having lovely flowers along the shoulders and sleeves. The kimono itself was a sight to behold because it fit her boy perfectly and showcased the majority of her assets and curves without appearing overly dramatic. 8. I stared at her until her blue, slitted eyes locked with mine. The woman smiled mischievously and said, "You know, staring is rude." I became aware that I was staring at her, and my eyes grew wide. I nervously said, Sorry, Ms. I didn't really want a woman as attractive as her to despise me." Do you know where I am, Ms.?" was her simple response to my query, which was to giggle. Did I say something amusing or incorrect that made her laugh? I scowled as I said, "Anyo, what's so funny?" The woman stopped laughing and walked slowly toward me. "No, nothing is wrong. You are currently in the recess of your own mind while your real body is resting in the real world." Even though I secretly felt that I could trust the woman in front of me, I instantly tensed and retreated because I can't take any chances. Getting hurt is something I detest. When the woman saw what the blonde was doing, she furrowed her brow and realized why the boy had reacted that way. She gave the boy a sad smile and said, "No need to worry, boy." Her voice was honest and truthful, but it also carried a note of sadness. "I won't hurt," she paused, adding, "I will never hurt you." I stopped for a second, wondering if I should really trust her. I listened to her voice repeatedly in my mind while I regarded her with suspicion. I've had my trust betrayed without any pain for as long as I can remember, but having it happen to me so frequently has sharpened my judgment, and based on how I feel around her and the tone she used earlier, I was unable to detect the slightest trace of malice. Gulping, I made the risky decision to ask, Do you promise not to hurt me, Ne-san?" She responded by kneeling down at eye level and staring into my eyes. Both blue eyes said, as I said, "I will never hurt you, I promise." For the second time that day she paused for a few seconds before asking, "Now would you mind telling me your name, little one?" "I'm Uzumaki Naruto and I'll become Hokage Datbeo," she said. Frowning at me, I turned to face her as she stepped forward, wrapped her arms around my shoulders, and embraced me with tenderness, warmth, and affection. Her gesture caused my eyes to widen. I honestly don't know how to respond because no one has ever given me a hug before. I've witnessed some parents embrace their kids, and honestly, I've always envied them for the warmth and the genuine sense of having someone love and support you. Even though it was such a small and straightforward gesture, it was enough to bring tears to my eyes. "Play Wingless by Yumaniko BGM," she said in a dejected tone. "You don't have to lie to me, young one. Just let it all out." One of the few occasions I had physical contact with someone without getting battered and bruised was this one. I sobbed as I gave her a hug in return, as I felt her hand caress my back, as I cried for all the suffering I had endured throughout my life, as I cried for all the loneliness I was experiencing, and as I finally found even a tiny bit of happiness in these tender and loving embraces. "My name is Naruto. People call me a monster. Demon. I don't have any parents. People tell me they abandoned me when I was born. I don't want to be Hokage. I hate this village," I said as I sobbed as I told the older woman everything. I heard her gritting her teeth in an attempt to control her rage. "They hurt me. It hurts Not just the pain of being beaten up, I feel it. The pain of loneliness. I hate the feeling. I hate it. I don't know why, but for some reason, the dam just broke, and I found myself spilling all of my emotions on her. I don't know how long it took, but she kept hugging me even after I stopped crying. That is, until I heard her sob softly, "I'm sorry," as tears streamed from her stunning eyes as she repeatedly muttered, "Sorry." I stared at her, perplexed. "What are you apologizing for? You don't need to be sorry for anything," I responded. She released the embrace and got up, moving a few paces away from me. She asked with tears still streaming down her cheeks, "Do you know why people hate you, young one?" My eyes widened instantly. That was one of the answers I frantically searched for? "No," I replied, anticipating to hear the explanation shortly. The statement, "It's because of me," caused me to freeze in place. I was suffering because of the first person who truly showed me kindness. I asked, nearly frightened to hear the response, "What do you mean by that?" "I am known as the Kyuubi no Yoko, one of the great and all-powerful Biju. 6 years ago, I was forcefully freed from my previous container, your mother Uzumaki Kushina, by a masked man, and with those damnable red eyes he controlled me. I don't really know what the man made me do, but when I came to I was surrounded by many ninjas and I was being attacked. Having no choice I fought back, although I do admit I would have just left, but I was still kinda mad because of that prick who dared to control me." She was scratching her head slightly at last before continuing. "Eventually, though, your mother managed to calm me down. After I calmed down your father, the Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage, sacrificed his life to seal me within you." My eyes widened as I tried to take in all of the information she had just thrown at me. Despite what some may believe, I wasn't particularly thrilled to find out that my father was the 4th Hokage. I reasoned that I wasn't a Yamanaka, and the only other blonde who could have been my father was someone else. Indeed, I did admire the man, but not because he was a Hokage, but rather because of his accomplishments and abilities that I had previously read about in a book. But all of my remaining mental strength after taking in the information adds up to one thing: who was I going to hold responsible for my miserable existence? The man in the mask? Who is this woman in front of me? The 4th Hokage, my father? I asked her, slowly opening my eyes. Why are you telling this to me?" As I closed my eyes and started to consider how I would react to what she had just told me, she responded, "Because you deserve the truth." As I noticed her closing her eyes, seemingly in anticipation of my outburst, then I saw how she had been crying earlier, how she felt guilty, how she had been controlled, how she had been made to do something she didn't want to do, and now she realized that her very existence had ruined my life. Another sin added to her already extensive list. When I got close to her and noticed that she was tense, I opened my arms and gave her a hug. She opened her blue eyes and asked tremblingly, "Why?" Tears were still streaming from her eyes. I hugged her tighter and said, "Because you look sad, you look the same like me." The gorgeous woman with the red hair started crying and gave me a hug in return. "After all the mushy stuff, time skip," I said, "can you help me get stronger?" I put my head on the crimson-haired woman's lap and she asked, "Why do you want power, young one?" I gave it some thought and remained silent as I considered her one straightforward query. I looked up at her and asked, "Would it make all the hurt go away? Do you want to get stronger, so you won't ever need to cry anymore?" The woman gazed at me with a sorrowful grin. "Sorry, young one, I have lived for a long time and there is one thing I know. You will always get hurt. One cannot prevent that. It is a sad part of living. As long as you live you will experience pain, the pain of getting beaten up, the pain of losing, the pain of sickness, the pain of losing someone you love. But eventually the more you experience pain, the stronger you will get, and eventually the pain will come to pass." She stopped for a moment to look at him. "So why to wish for strength, you one?" After a brief pause, I said in a dejected tone, "I want to get stronger so that one day I can leave this village. I want to travel around the nations and find a new place I'll call home." The Kyuubi grinned in response to my modest request, saying, "You already have the power, young one. You just need to mold and develop it. I know it's a selfish reason, but please help me get stronger." I was actually taken aback by that. I exclaimed, "What do you mean I already have the power?" As my enthusiasm faded and I began to pout, I questioned, "Wait, if I already had it, why'd I still get beaten up?" She abruptly disappeared, causing me to fall to the ground and strike my head. "Silly boy, if there is one thing you should thank those stupid villagers about is what they did to you this time." The Kyuubi laughed. "Itai," I uttered as I started scanning my surroundings and finally noticed the redhead standing far away. She raised her arms to the side and said, "Have you noticed it yet, young one? Concentrate and look closely at everything here." "Look closely? What do you mean look I interrupted her as I started to pay attention to the lines and points that appeared all of a sudden. I remember now, when I woke up the hospital bed earlier, saw them everywhere. What are they? As she slowly made her way back to me, the redhead responded, "This is your new power, young one, the Chokushi no Megan." I thought, Chokushi no Megan. Hi, young one, it is the eyes unlocked by those who came into close contact with death, and in your case actually dying. Congratulations Naruto, you are now able to perceive death, a truly magnificent ability. A rarity even to my kind, the Biju is only but a myth. As I listened to her explanation, I stared at her in disbelief. You can say that those things represent the fate of all things, the finality, their end, their death, she continued, sounding almost excited. The lines you see, or as the legends called them, are the Shi no Sen, and the points are called the Shi no Ten. By tracing against the Shi no Sen, you can effectively break the target along the line, cutting it cleanly, and the part corresponding to it will never move again even if the main body is alive. On the other hand, by stabbing or piercing the Shi no Ten, you can end one's existence. Their death is just an aftermath of their entire existence being destroyed. Curious, I asked, how do you know so much about them? This is because I am the most knowledgeable of my siblings, unlike that sloth the Sanbi or that crazy bastard Shukaku. I actually used my time in this mortal realm to learn as much as I can, she pouted, placing her arms beneath her bosom and pushing it up while turning her head away in a defensive manner. Hi, just asking Ne-san, he said, turning back to face the redhead who was pouting. I just remembered, but when I first opened my eyes and saw all these lines I got this massive headache. Do the eyes have anything to do with it? I inquired. The redhead said, as she assumed a thinking pose and put one finger just below her lips. I waited for her response for several minutes while I just stared at her. She rubbed the back of her head with one hand and stuck her tongue out, saying, "I don't know." My perspiration immediately stopped. She continued to rub the back of her head with one hand as she said, "It might have been because it was your first time seeing them. You might need to get used to them first." I asked, a little annoyed by all these squiggly lines, "So how do I turn it off?" He reasoned, "It would be best not to touch anything here because this is my mind and I could end up looking like a vegetable in a matter of seconds if I touch a point or a line." With a note of pride in her voice, she said, "Well, I can assist you with that." The Kyuubi came up to me and covered my head with her hands. "Kodai Fuinjutsu. Magingoroshi," she cried out as a dazzling red light started to surround my body, creating an intricate pattern of seals in a language I don't even understand that spread across the floor and all over my body. I must admit that it was a strange sensation to see so many random symbols appear directly in front of my eyes. "Fuin." The redhead cried as the array of words started to move upward, more precisely into my eyes. Each of the arrays she created eventually disappeared with a puff of smoke. Kyuubi said, "So how is it? As of right now, I've sealed your eyes so that constantly seeing death won't have a negative effect on your body." The redhead grinned as she started speaking again. Looking around, I noticed that I don't see the lines or points anymore. I can't see them anymore. I asked naively, "So how do I channel this chakra thing into my eyes?" However, I wasn't prepared for the response I received. With her face concealed in the palm of her hand, she sulked, "You don't know a thing about chakra or fighting or anything, do you? Why did you think I asked you if you can make me stronger in the first place?" I replied. I nodded, gesturing for her to continue, and she paused before saying, "Okay, I will agree to train and even to lend you my power when you need to, under one condition. That you will help me fulfill my wish." With the biggest smile I could muster, I said, "Sure, I'll help you out." "So what's your wish?" I added. She voluntarily consoled me earlier and now promised to train me to help her fulfill one wish as the least I could do to repay her. As she put her hand on top of my head and started massaging it, she said, "I'll tell you sometime in the future, young one." I wasn't sure what to call her, so I asked curiously, "Nene-san, I just wanted to ask, what's your name?" With a smile, the Kyuubi said, "You can call me Eiko." Dodge. Abruptly, Eiko called out to her ship. With his eyes already open and his tanto already drawn, Naruto bounded out of bed right away. The blonde exclaimed in evident annoyance, "What the hell, Ine? I already told you to stop waking me up like that." In between giggles, the Biju said, "I'm sorry, I can't help it, it's just so funny seeing you act like that." In response, Naruto simply sheathed his tanto and deactivated his eyes, growling. The voice inside the blonde's head said, "Oh, come on, I was just kidding, don't be a spoiled sport, Naru-kun." The blonde rolled his eyes and walked to the bathroom to take a cold shower, saying, Yeah, I'm used to it, nay." His landlord didn't want to waste warm water on a monster, so he had to settle for cold ones. After meeting Eiko on that fateful day 6 years ago, he was proud to state that his life had never been better. Eiko started teaching Naruto how to survive in Konoha as soon as he emerged from his mindscape and left the hospital. Eiko believed Naruto had learned the ancient art of borrowing since the stores either ejected him or forced him to purchase inferior goods at 3 times the price. Yes, Naruto began borrowing a lot of things without getting caught after that day. He borrowed some basic weapons like shurikens and kunais, some food, and some books on ninjutsu, taijutsu, and fuinjutsu from the library. He even broke into the cage tower one night without being caught and used some of the forbidden scrolls techniques. Needless to say, he had a great time during the past 6 years. Naruto has mastered a variety of chakra control exercises, including leaf balancing, tree walking, and water walking, which his Eiko Nei taught him how to use. His favorite training experience, though, was when Nei-san taught him how to use fuinjutsu, which he picked up quickly. Eiko explained to him that learning it was made difficult by the Uzumaki blood coursing through his veins. He also learned the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu from Eiko, and until he used them for training, it was even his favorite jutsu. His brain was overloaded by the Kage Bunshin's memory feedback and the strain on his Magen, which left him in a coma for a full day. Yes, he still gets chills from the experience, but he hasn't used the Kenjutsu yet. In addition, he learned how to use some Futon and Kaden Jutsu and discovered his nature affinities, which were wind and fire. Naruto was even able to pick up a jutsu by watching a guy named Hime, who was always smoking, or something. As Naruto dried off after getting out of the shower, he couldn't help but stare at his reflection in the mirror. Long was the little, scrawny child who was constantly beaten up in the past. He saw the reflection of a 5-foot-tall young man in front of him. He was well built for his age, with a flat stomach, 6-pack abs, and well-toned arms and legs. All in all, he had one of those athletic builds that one made a guy would be proud of, the result of intense training. Yes, Eiko is an incredible slave driver. He has performed 1,000 one-handed vertical hand-ups with 2 enormous rocks strapped around his legs with each hand, completed 100 laps around Konoha with gravity weights on while being pursued by a vengeful mob, and climbed the Hokage monument with one hand. All things considered, his physique was ideal for a ninja. A simple stab wound to his heart caused the old scar around his chest to be traced by his hand as he watched himself in the mirror. Despite Eiko's assistance, the scar didn't go away for some reason. The blonde shrugged it off and started to dry himself out. Once he had dried off, Uzumaki left the restroom and returned to his room. Naruto took out a scroll that was concealed beneath his bed and directed chakra into one of the seals written on it. Having long since learned not to keep anything valuable here because his house was broken into at least 4 times a week, a fresh outfit and some jerky he had made a few weeks prior materialized with a puff of smoke while eating some jerky. Naruto sat on his bed and started getting dressed. After a few minutes, Naruto got up and put on his full outfit. He was dressed in black Jonin pants, dark blue shinobi shoes, and a long-sleeved black shirt. A dark blue coat with red lining around the collar, sleeves, and middle was worn over the shirt. The Uzumaki clan's emblem was emblazoned on the back of the coat, which also had sleeves that were marginally shorter than his black shirt. For a brief moment, Naruto pulled back his left sleeve, exposing a number of seals drawn along his left arm with a "there we go" expression. Naruto snatched up his tanto and sealed it in one of his forearm seals. 10. Looking good, Naru-kun, Eiko said, causing the blonde to smile. The blonde teased, liking what you seeing, eh nay? The blonde rolled his eyes for the second time that day as the Biju laughed and said, ha ha ha, you're 100 years too young to try and flirt with me. Gaki. The blonde grinned as he glanced at a calendar next to his bed. He was 1 day away from leaving this foolish village and it was his last day at the academy. The blonde then walked out of his apartment, locking it behind him as he went, heading for the academy. When he opened the door and walked into his classroom, the blonde's deadpan expression made him giggle sweetly. Well, hooray for this being the last day of this glorious experience they call school, he said. Before cutting the connection between them, the Kyuubi said, well, just wake me up after you leave this hellhole. Remember, we have a small taijutsu training session this evening, so till then, Yane. As soon as he stepped into the room, everyone fell silent. In addition to the fact that he beat them to a bloody pulp when some of the guys Kiba cough attempted to mess with or bully him, the guys thought he was creepy because of his quiet and icy manner, which terrifies them to no end. Some of the girls Hinata thought he was dreamy because he exuded a coolness and a hint of mystery that made them fall head over heels for him. The blonde picked a seat near a window in the far back corner of the room and headed up the stairs. He took a seat, put his right arm on his desk, and rested his chin on his left as he gazed out the window, causing his fangirls, yes, he had those, to squeal. Naruto started to nod off while taking in the scenery, ignoring the noises made by the fangirls. One of the voices next to the blonde said, yo Naruto. Without even glancing back at the boy with the pineapple hair who sat next to him, the blonde answered, "Ohio Shikamaru." Shikamaru put his arms on his head and yawned as he prepared to take a nap. "Hey, do you want to play shogi later?" he asked. The blonde, somewhat disappointed at having lost the chance to play against his best shogi player, said, "Sorry Shikamaru-san, I already have an appointment this afternoon." Unfortunately, as soon as he began doing what the Nara did best, he fell asleep. As he waited for the exam to begin, the blonde continued to pass the time peacefully by gazing out the window. Before long, a tick mark appeared on the blonde's head as two girls yelling broke the silence. What Naruto could only describe as a pink-haired monkey screamed, "Get away from Sasuke Ino, Buddha Sasuke-kun is mine." Another blonde, but less obnoxious, monkey screamed, "No, you back off, you forehead baka, Sasuke is mine." As he saw Yamanaka Ino and Haruno Sakura rank second and third on his list of the most obnoxious people he has ever encountered, Naruto thought, "Stupid fangirls. There is only one person who can top the two of them, and that person is Uchiha Sasuke, the man they were battling for in the last Uchiha. He says he is the last Uchiha, but Naruto was aware that there was another, the weasel-masked Anbu Uchiha Itachi, who was one of the few people the boy truly liked returning to Sasuke. The man was an absolute jerk. He exuded a sense of superiority and detested being outperformed. Ask the last student who defeated him in a taijutsu match. Oh, no, you can't, because the kid was expelled for making a pathetic attempt to kill the jerk. The civilian council is bending over his wishes. After observing the smirking Uchiha while the two elite chuckle Kunoichi battled for him, Naruto could only sigh in exhaustion. As he observed the different individuals in the room, the blonde allowed his eyes to wander. Aburame Shino, who was seated in the corner across from him, was the first person Naruto saw. Shino was a quiet, collected man who preferred to be by himself. He is wearing a sea green jacket with a high, upturned collar, dark sunglasses over his eyes, and bushy brown hair. Naruto observed Shino listening to the mutt, who had a dog over his head and was dressed in a hooded fur-lined coat. The mutt Kiba Inazuki, who frequently appears to be in heat and ready to rape someone. That made the mutt a top priority on his list of irritable people, but whoop the fucking do, for some reason, the mutt detested Naruto. Perhaps it was because he kicked the mutt's ass numerous times over the years. Naruto's gaze continued to wander until he noticed another noteworthy figure. Akamichi Choji, a large-boned child eating potato chips while sporting a hat over his head and, for the sake of simplicity, underwear. He turned to face Hyuga Hinata and Kurama Yakumo, two girls who were chatting close to Choji. Hinata, who wore a cream-colored hooded jacket with fur at the cuffs and hem, was a shy and timid girl with dark blue hair that was cut short and leveled just above her forehead. Naruto sighed because he could tell she was infatuated with him because she blushed whenever he was close. He doesn't particularly dislike her, but he also didn't particularly like her. He was just as uninterested in her as he was in everyone else, so he's not sure how to react if she confesses to him. He'll handle it when the time comes. He then went on to the heir of the Kurama clan, who has long brown hair that is braided on one side and left straight on the other. She had a pink sash and a pink kimono on. Yakumo waved back at her after Naruto gave her a brief greeting, but she turned away and resumed speaking to Hinata. The girl was one of the few people Naruto truly befriended, so their relationship was a little complicated, but he recently noticed that she was putting distance between them. Naruto sighed. As Shikamaru would say, Mendokusai, the blonde thought his peers were more acquaintances than friends or allies, and he wasn't particularly close to any of them. Shikamaru and Yakumo were the only exception, as Naruto considered them to be close friends or acquaintances. As the door opened, Naruto turned to watch Iruka, the Chunin instructor for their class, and his assistant Mizuki enter the room. The scarred Chunin questioned, "Is everyone prepared for the graduation exam?" "Good," was said by Chunin after he and his assistant started distributing the test to all of the students in the class after receiving a collection of yes or nods. After giving Naruto his test, the assistant instructor proceeded to give the other students theirs. Naruto sighed as he glanced at his test paper. Mizuki was attempting to deceive him by using a feeble genjutsu on the paper. Iruka said, "You may begin," as Naruto briefly opened his eyes and used his pencil to poke a point in the illusion. Dispelling it, Naruto gritted his teeth and glared at Mizuki. After experiencing a mild headache, Naruto shook his head and began answering the test, thinking, "Bastard." After an hour as the Chunins started gathering everyone's exams, Naruto just stared. The test wasn't hard at all. In fact, it was so simple that he completed it in 15 minutes. As he started calling out names for the test, Iruka stated, "That concludes the written portion of the exam. For the second portion, you are to proceed to the next room when your name is called to perform henge, Kawarimi, and Bunshin no Jutsu. Uzumaki Naruto. Mizuki yelled as the blonde got up and moved to the adjacent room. Iruka said, "You may begin," as she sat next to her chart, prepared to grade the blonde. Naruto shocked the two Chunin by turning into an exact replica of Uchiha Itachi and exclaiming, "Henge no Jutsu. Kawarimi no Jutsu." The blonde exclaimed as an empty chair abruptly took his place. The Uchiha cried out, "Itachi Hii," as Naruto reappeared in the other room, where the chair had now dropped his henge. "Bunshin no Jutsu," was the blonde's final statement upon noticing that the two instructors were glancing in the direction of the screen just as the last Uchiha entered the room. The two Chunins finally awoke from their reverie to see the two clones the blonde had made before dispelling them while scanning the area. Sasuke exclaimed, "Has anyone seen Itachi here?" "Nope," was the Uzumaki's response when he noticed Sasuke frantically yelling, "Itachi," as he fled the room. Iruka merely nodded when Naruto asked, "Can I go now?" The blonde sat down on his seat and walked back to the previous room, ignoring all the chatter and fearing the appearance of AS-rank Nin. Naruto grinned because he was extremely fortunate that the two were preoccupied with the prick. Otherwise, they would have realized that he was using Kage Bunshin no Jutsu rather than the standard Bunshin as he awaited the conclusion of the second exam section. Naruto closed his eyes. Layer for 30 minutes outside the target practice and sparring area of the academy. As he resumed calling to explain the test, Iruka stated, "Now on to the last part of these exams. A kunai and shuriken test, marksmanship test, followed by a 5-minute sparring match against either me or Mizuki." Iruka grabbed a kunai and threw it into one of the training dummies used for target practice. Everyone must use the 5 shurikens and 5 kunais given to them to hit all the targets. You will get 1 point for hitting the dummy, 2 points if you hit area, and 3 points if you hit the target in the heart. Iruka concluded as he started yelling names. As everyone else took their turn on the target practice test, Naruto waited for his name to be called while leaning against a wall far from the group. Shino received 10 out of 15 for the kunai and 12 out of 15 for the shuriken. Shoji received a score of 10 out of 15 for the kunai and 9 out of 15 for the shuriken. Shikamaru's shuriken and kunai scores were both 9 out of 15. With the shuriken, Ino received an 8 out of 15, and with the kunai, a 9. Sakura received 10 out of 15 for the kunai and 11 out of 15 for the shuriken. Sasuke received 13 out of 15 for the kunai and 14 out of 15 for the shuriken. Kiba received a score of 9 out of 15 for the kunai and 10 out of 15 for the shuriken. Hinata's shuriken and kunai scores were 11 out of 15 and 11 out of 15, respectively. With the shuriken, Yakumo scored 12 out of 15, and with the kunai, he scored 8 out of 15. Mizuki gave Naruto the kunais and shurikens and said, "Uzumaki, it's your turn." When he saw that the weapon's points were blunted, Naruto simply shook his head. As Naruto channeled wind chakra into a kunai and threw it at the target, striking it in the heart, he thought, "If you want me to fail, you need to try better than that, Teme." 1. was his response as he started to channel additional wind chakra to the 4 other kunai. To the surprise of everyone present, the blonde exclaimed, 2, 3, 4, 5, as each kunai struck the target's heart, eventually creating a huge hole in it. Naruto charged all 5 of the shurikens with wind chakra as he moved on to another target, throwing them all in different directions. To everyone's surprise, the shurikens struck the target square in the heart. "Excellent work, Naruto," Iruka exclaimed, proud of the Uzumaki's abilities. "Perfect score for both kunai and shuriken." Iruka rolled his eyes and ignored the Uchiha, who was obviously upset that someone had outperformed him. "He cheated. I demand his results to be nulled," the Uchiha said. Naruto only said, "Meh," before the pink and blonde monkeys barraged him. As Naruto ignored her and started to leave, all he could hear was, "Naruto baka, you cheated. How the hell could you get a perfect? You're not even." Sakura pulled her fist back and threw a cheap shot at the retreating blonde, but the blonde sidestepped and missed the blow. "Don't ignore me, Naruto baka," she said. Cruin NCCCCCCHHHHH. Sakura was face down on the ground with her arm broken and a few ribs broken, and a loud noise reverberated throughout the entire area. When Iruka saw what had actually happened, his eyes widened before Sakura struck him with her fist. Naruto ducked, spun around, and struck her outstretched arm with a knife, shattering it, then slashed out to her sides with the same hand, shattering her ribs. As soon as he touched the blonde Uzumaki's shoulder, Mizuki said, "You monster, come with me, you need to be Puni," before the blonde interrupted. That was an act of self-defense, Mizuki-sensei. She attacked me with my back turned on her. Or are you telling me that shinobis should allow their opponents to get behind them and do nothing if they attack? Iruka picked up the fallen Sakura and said, Mizuki let Naruto go. He didn't do anything wrong. He just defended himself. It was Sakura's fault for attacking him. He then used Shunshin to disappear and said, we will now be having a 5-minute break. After I come back the test will resume. The Jinchuriki said, so are you going to let go of me or not, Mizuki-sensei? In a chilly tone that made Mizuki shudder. Good, was Naruto's direct response when he sensed the Chunin release his grip and retreat. You don't deserve that power, the prick muttered, clenching his fists as he watched the blonde ignore him and leave Naruto walk back to his spot. Ignoring the glaring eyes of a certain Uchiha, Naruto watched Iruka reappear while leaning against the wall and recommenced the test. Naruto did his best to wait while he closed his eyes in boredom. A familiar voice said, don't you think you went overboard there, to the blonde? Nah, I was holding black, the blonde said, turning to face Yakumo, who was leaning against the wall next to him. She questioned, you call that holding back? And received a laugh in response. She rolled her eyes at his response, if I didn't it would have killed her. She told the blonde to do a better job holding back next time, as she pushed herself away from the wall and started to return to the crowd. With a slight smile on his face, Naruto simply said, yeah, I'll try to. It's your turn, Naruto, Iruka yelled. I choose Mizuki as a sparring partner, Iruka-sensei, Naruto said in an uncannily serene tone as the blonde nodded and started to approach the sparring ring. Desperate to conceal his smirk, Mizuki entered the ring. Time put the demon in his place, Mizuki thought as he assumed a basic Chunin stance. Meanwhile, the demon brat assumed a stance in which his right hand was extended forward away from his boy and his left hand was hanging loosely. Mizuki took 1 step forward and 1 step back. Hajime, Iruka said, indicating that the match had begun. Ignoring the smirk on the blonde's face, Mizuki stepped forward and punched Naruto. With a single swift motion, Naruto thrust his free hand forward, striking the Chunin in the sternum and knocking him unconscious. He then simply cut Mizuki's arm away with his outstretched hand, shattering it. Well, I've always known Naruto and Mizuki didn't get along, but damn, Mizuki got his ass handed to him, Iruka said with a sigh as he palmed his face. Winner Uzumaki Naruto, he said, selecting the now injured Mizuki and using Shunshin for the second time that day to drop someone off at the hospital. After seeing how quickly Naruto worked on the Chunin, the Uchiha yelled, I demand you to teach me how to do that. Naruto said languidly, you did say something? Before continuing. Meanwhile, for some reason, a silver-haired Jonin felt proud in front of the memorial stone. According to the Uchiha, I said teach it to me. For the umpteenth time today, Naruto ignored the Uchiha and said, don't want to. Iruka reappeared with another Chunin in place of Mizuki, interrupting the Uchiha as he tried to make his new demand. Hey, come back here, I demand you to. Iruka began yelling names again, and Naruto leaned back against the wall. An hour following the final students' battle with the Chunin, Iruka started announcing the results. Naruto was the Rookie of the Year, earning a perfect score of 100%, followed by Uchiha Sasuke, who scored 94%. Yakumo received the highest score of 91% for the Kunoichis, followed by Hinata with 88%. Iruka said proudly as he vanished in a whirl of leaves, congratulations to all of you who passed. Report to this room tomorrow at 9 a.m. to meet up with your Jonin instructor. That is all, you dismissed for the day and good luck with your ninja careers. Before any of his fangirls could ask him out on a date or before a certain Uchiha demanded that he do something for the prick, Naruto disappeared with a Shunshin tied around his waist with his new leaf headband. Office of the Hokage. When he witnessed Naruto using his crystal ball to harm Mizuki and Sakura, the Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen scowled. After the accident a few years ago, the boy had truly changed. The formerly gregarious child grew quiet and aloof, only speaking to others when they initiated the conversation. Hell, the child no longer even called him Gigi. His plan blew up in his face, he realized. He intended to allow civilian mobs to occasionally beat Naruto without causing any serious harm, and essentially persuade the youngster to pursue becoming Hokage in order to win the respect and affection of the villagers and stop them from harming him. That went really well, or at least it did, until a moron went and stabbed the child in the chest with a sword. Yes, things took a turn for the worse after that. According to his sources, the Kazukage's son went completely crazy after being treated the same way as Naruto, though it could have been worse. But as he watched Naruto get stronger and even managed to annihilate Mizuki, He couldn't help but smile. He is a prodigy without equal. Much like Minato, the old Kage still thought that the blonde would ultimately lead Konoha to greater heights and protect it. Even though Naruto was now a little more aloof and cold, how mistaken he was. Returning to Naruto, Naruto reappeared in front of Ichiraku, a ramen stand, one of the few places in Konoha where he could actually get food. Naruto took a seat next to an elderly man at one of the free chairs in Ichiraku. The blonde said, "One miso ramen," and Tucci, the proprietor, grinned and started to prepare his order. "Coming up," the ramen chef said. The elderly man sitting next to Naruto remarked, "The ramen sold here is really good, wouldn't you agree, Yuan?" The blonde said, "Yeah, it's the best," as he turned to face the elderly man with the odd red eyes, gray hair, and beard. The elderly man simply grinned and chuckled as he said, "I have been traveling for a long time and have visited many places, but I must say that Ichiraku serves the best ramen I have ever tasted." Tucci noted Naruto's order in front of him and said, "Here is your miso ramen." Naruto started eating quickly and finished the bowl in a matter of seconds. "Another one," he said, making the elderly man next to him laugh even harder. When Naruto turned his head after receiving a tick mark, he saw the elderly man getting up and snatching a cane that was resting on the stand's side. As he paid for his ramen and walked away from the stand, the elderly man said, "Nice talking to you, young one, and good luck in facing what lies ahead." For some reason, Naruto felt that the elderly man was strange, and he stared at him as he started to leave before he heard Tucci place another bowl of ramen in front of him. He did indeed stare. Naruto shrugged and resumed eating. The old man said, "No matter which world you belong to, you always prove to be very interesting, Uzumaki Naruto," before he disappeared in a strange light. After 25 bowls of ramen, taking out his wallet and paying for the meal, Naruto exclaimed, "Man, that hit the spot," with joy. "Hey Naruto, just who I was looking for," said Mizuki as he entered the stand with a cast over his arm as he was leaving. Naruto asked, "What do you want, Mizuki?" His joy had already left him. "What if I told you there was a way for you to get promoted into a Chunin?" replied Mizuki. Naruto walked out of the ramen stand, leaving a furious Mizuki behind, and said icily, "Sorry, I'm not interested, Mizuki." He then went to his apartment. Apartment building. Naruto checked for any traps the villagers might have set to kill him as soon as he arrived in front of his apartment. Since no one had broken in and there were no traps, Naruto opened the door and went inside his apartment. Naruto climbed onto his bed and sat in the lotus sitting position, swiftly locking the door to keep anyone out. The blonde closed his eyes and focused on entering his mental realm. The mindscape. Naruto discovered that he was standing in the center of an open field in the same location that he had seen 6 years prior. The hill was still grassy, the wind was still blowing steadily, and the stunning night sky was still there. Eiko remarked, "Took you long enough," upon spotting Naruto. Looking at Eiko, who was dressed in a kimono, the blonde said, "Sorry about that, got a bit sidetracked." The redhead was seated in the lotus sitting position a few feet away from Naruto, still looking stunning as ever. As he started to warm up and stretch, the blonde inquired, "How was your day?" Eiko said nonchalantly as she slowly got to her feet, "Nothing special, just meditated the whole day." "Play, liberate me from hell." As he completed his warm-up, the blonde inquired, "So taijutsu only for today?" As she put on her combat gear, Eiko remarked, "Yes, just taijutsu for today, Naru-kun." Naruto nodded as he assumed one of Nanaya Ken's stances, which is Shiryo, the style he has been attempting to learn for the last 5 years. The Nanaya clan, who are regarded as a demon-eradicating clan throughout the elemental nations, employs and believes in the Nanaya Ken fighting style. With the help of Eiko, he started learning the style after discovering it in one of the books he borrowed from the library. A demon learning a demon-slaying fighting style is ironic, isn't it? The technique primarily involves thrusts, prods, and slashes from the hands and elbows of a knife directed at different body parts. Since the goal of this style is to incapacitate opponents by striking their weakest areas, it mainly relies on speed, reflex, and flexibility rather than strength. Eiko ran towards him and jumped at the last second, saying, "Show me how good your Nanaya Ken is, Naru-kun." She yelled, "Dynamiku Entori," as she tried to kick Naruto, but he swiftly retreated, avoiding the jump kick, leaving a crater in the ground. Instantly, Naruto rushed forward with his arms spread wide at his sides and pumped chakra into his legs. As he abruptly stopped directly in front of Eiko, Naruto uttered the words, "Nanaya Ken, Seisho no Kai," and used the momentum to swing both of his arms forward, striking Eiko in the chest in an X pattern. "Nanaya Ken, Psycho no Ya," he said as he quickly used Kawarimi to avoid the exploding clone. Naruto pulled back one of his arms and immediately followed up. He thrust his arm forward, aiming for her chest, and to his surprise, it pierced right through her. WTF, he thought as she suddenly started to glow. Shit, he thought. The blonde backflipped, avoiding two arms that were reaching out to grab him. The hell, I thought it was taijutsu only, he grumbled. Shortly avoiding a fist to the head, Naruto ducked down as soon as he landed and spun around, blocking her follow-up attack with one arm while putting his other arm forward to target her in the stomach. However, the redhead grabbed his hand with both of hers. As a ninja Naru-kun, you should anticipate the unexpected, Eiko said, applying pressure to my arm. Nanaya-ken. Maya, was Naruto's cry as he pushed his free arm forward toward her neck. However, Eiko released one of her gripping hands and used it to seize the attacking hand's forearm. Putting more pressure on both of the blonde's arms, the red-haired beauty remarked, that attack would have incapacitated a high Chunin to a low Jonin opponent, but really Naru-kun, you need to be faster. Nanaya-ken. Yari. The blonde exclaimed as he struck the Kyuubi on her chest, forcing her to release it. Naruto simply grinned as he took both of her arms and held them tightly before leaping with both legs curled towards his chest and pushing them downward towards Eiko. Naruto used the momentum of the kick to flip back in midair and land directly in front of the stunned Biju as Naruto slapped Eiko with the X-pattern chop. He uttered, Nanaya-ken. Seisho no Kai. The Biju barely avoided the attack by taking one step back, and the only thing she damaged was her shirt, which now had an X-shaped gash on it as she dodged the blonde's subsequent thrust and slashes. The Biju grinned. She taunted the blonde by saying, Naru-kun, you need to try harder. Naruto simply retreated and assumed the Shiryu stance in response to her taunt, keeping one hand relaxed at his side and extending the other forward. As she concentrated and pumped chakra into her fist, Eiko grinned. As she delivered a punch with enough force to rival Tsunade's, she said, try to survive this one, Naru-kun. Naruto started channeling Futon chakra along both of his hands as soon as he saw what she was going to do. The blonde yelled, Nanaya-ken. Futon Seisho no Kai, as he used his wind-enhanced cross-chop to directly confront her attack. Eiko and Naruto were pushed a few feet apart by the two powerful attacks that cancelled each other out, leaving cracks in the ground. Without giving the blonde a chance to rest, Eiko charged at him and launched a barrage of insults at him after taking a few steps back. Naruto patiently waited for an opportunity to present itself by dodging and blocking each of her punches as Eiko retreated and used a well-known hand seal. Naruto's eyes widened. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The Biju smugly declared as she produced 4 clones that charged at her ship with her. Frigging Kage Bunshins, was Naruto's declaration as he parried a punch from his front, blocked a palm strike from his right, avoided a cheap shot from behind, and blocked a kick from his left side. Naruto uttered the words, Nanaya-ken. Zanshu, as he swiftly decapitated one clone by putting a knife to its neck. Nanaya-ken. Psycho no ya. The blonde yelled as he repelled a clone that had overextended its attack and stabbed it in the stomach. Naruto started to wait for a chance to launch another counterattack, thinking, 2 down, 3 to go. There, however, Naruto effectively dispelled a clone that attempted to attack him in his flank by thrusting his knife hand again. Then, without hesitation, Naruto turned around to avoid an axe kick that was intended for his extended arm. Naruto used the spin's momentum to unleash another Zanshu, beheading the clone. Before Naruto had a chance to catch his breath, Eiko launched a barrage of kicks at him. She kept thinking about how much the blonde's performance had improved over the years. The man in front of her was a murderer. The helpless and frail boy of long ago was no longer there. The Biju thought. The Nanaya-ken is really a fearsome style, and it'll be only a matter of time until Naru-kun fully masters it. Before abruptly waking up, the blonde was briefly tripped by the Kyuubi's strong low kick after he blocked 2 incoming counterattacks. Naruto thought, shit, because he was now unsteady and had hardly time to raise both of his arms to his chest before a kick connected with it and threw him backwards. Eiko grinned as her kick struck, knowing that no matter how much she appreciated Naruto's newfound power, she would never allow him to defeat her. After passing through, the redhead vanished in a haze of red, then reappeared in midair behind the blonde leg that was already drawn up. She then kicked Naruto with her axe, striking him in the chest and sending him crashing into the ground, forming a crater 6 feet deep beneath it. Eiko didn't stop there, though, because she then exhaled a fireball in the shape of a fox, sending it flying in the direction of the blonde. Since he had nothing else to do, Naruto uttered the words, fuck, and swiftly created a seal-less Kage Bunshin in the distance, applying Kawarimi to it just in time to avoid the flaming fox. A voice behind Naruto said, sorry, Naru-kun, you lost again. She wouldn't, he thought as the blonde's eye widened, and he turned to see the Kyuubi's cheeky smile. Nanaya ken dai ubi. Kobatsu. Eiko cried out as she thrust a chakra-enhanced knife hand forward, striking Naruto in the shaded area. A laughing redhead was the last thing Naruto saw before passing out. "You still barely conscious?" Naruto heard a voice say. "Nah," I said. "Wah, P?" stated wake up. As Naruto felt a sharp pain shoot up his cheeks, the voice said, and when the blonde opened his eyes, he saw a worried-looking Eiko who was about to slap him again in an attempt to wake him up. Fortunately for the blonde, Eiko saw that he was waking up and just managed to prevent another slap from striking his now bruised face. Nay, how long was I gone?" The blonde, still a little dazed, asked. Around 3 hours. I spent about an hour laughing, an hour actually looking for you, and another hour slapping you. Stupid Gaki making me worried," she said in a whisper. "Your Nanaya Ken is now at low to mid-Jonin level because of your good performance today. Gaki, if you want to get better, you'll need to find a real Nanaya and have them teach you," Eiko said, grinning at the blonde who was now completely recovered. The Kyuubi said sweetly, also, "Congratulations on becoming Genin Narutan," which caused her vessel to blush. "All right. Thanks, I don't really care about that, though, simply put, I would have more opportunities to truly leave this dump if I were a genin." Scratching the back of his head, Naruto uttered those words. Eiko loved to tease the blonde, saying, "You're getting stronger. Soon enough you might even increase your chances of beating me from 0% to 0.01%. One day, I'll defeat you. Datbeo." The red-haired beauty was already laughing when the blonde realized what he was saying and quickly covered his mouth. In between her giggles, the redhead remarked, "Oh god, you still have that ridiculous verbal tick. I thought you already got rid of it ages ago." He started to pout, and the blonde complained, "Shut up." When she finally stopped laughing, Eiko said, "I'm sorry, Naruto, it was just too funny." The blonde said gravely, "I truly appreciate everything you've done for me." The young blonde was hugged by the redhead, who smiled warmly and said, "I know, Naru-kun. I'll always be by your side, Naru-kun, no matter what you decide to do." "Thank you, Eiko-san, I appreciate everything. Without you, I don't know how I would have developed. I might have become a loud, obnoxious brat who yelled, 'I'm going to be Hokage,' while wearing orange." With a mocking tone, the blonde answered. As she started to cuddle the Uzumaki, the redhead laughed and said, "Peefed, you said it again." "From the bottom of my heart, arigato Eiko-san," the blonde said solemnly as she returned the hug, and Naruto grinned for a moment. For a few hours, Naruto remained in his mindscape, enjoying each other's company while they discussed the past, present, and future while the bright, twinkling night sky surrounded them, occasionally cooled by a breeze. "Oyasumi nasai A-chan." Naruto yawned as weariness finally overcame him. When Eiko said, "Oyasumi nasai Naru-kun, you have a long day tomorrow," Naruto nodded in return before finally disappearing from his mindscape. As soon as the blonde left, Eiko was already lying down on the grassy ground, gazing up at the starry sky and appreciating its beauty. "Hurry up and get stronger, Naru-kun, you're going to need it," the redhead said, before closing her eyes and dozing off. The office of the Hokage at the moment, Sarutobi Hiruzen was seated behind his desk with at least 20 Konoha Jonins surrounding him. "Hokage-sama, are you certain of your choice?" Among the Jonins, one inquired. "As I've already told the last 7 Jonins who asked me the same question, yes, I am sure. It has always been balanced by having the best Kunoichi, the Rookie of the Year, and the Dobi on the same team, but you are breaking years of tradition. But it's just overkill to have Kurama, Uzumaki, and Uchiha on the same team. Kurama, Uzumaki, and Nara ought to have been the ones to balance things out among all the other teams," the Jonin retorted. The Hokage effectively silenced the Jonin and anyone else who might have questioned his choices by saying, "No, my decision stands. Team 7 will be an all-around balanced team of taijutsu, ninjutsu, and genjutsu specialists, while Team 8 will be our tracking unit and Team 10 will be the second generation of the Ino Shikacho trio, and I'm pretty sure everyone here knows how well the earlier generation did." His secretary greeted him as Hokage-sama as she entered. "Yes," the secretary responded. "Civilians are already lining up in front of the office demanding that the demon be kicked out of the forces immediately and that they not be allowed to be ninjas." Before returning to more serious matters, the Kage dismissed his secretary and said, "Tell them that they have no say in my decisions and they have no right to tell me who to accept into my ranks." As he started to assign the Jonins to their teams, the Hokage remarked, "Well then, the senseis of the teams are as follows." Team placement day. As he made his way to the academy, Naruto was strolling through the streets of Konoha, eager to join his team and begin his career as a Konoha shinobi. With a sigh, Naruto asked, "How many?" As he walked on, the blonde inquired. The Biju replied, 26. As Naruto sighed and entered one of Konoha's alleys. "So what do you guys want?" Naruto asked, turning around to see precisely 26 civilians brandishing everything from shovels to swords to. "Wait. Is that a lamp?" Naruto wondered as he noticed one man brandishing a damn lamp. One of the men exclaimed, "Shut up, demon. We are just here to stop you from becoming a ninja," which made Naruto laugh uncontrollably. Naruto looked at the crowd and sprayed them with a good deal of ki to scare them. "Retards, if you wanted to do that, you should have tried to attack me yesterday." As you can see, points to the headband tied to his waist. "I'm a ninja, and since I'm a ninja I have the right to kill each and every one of you if any of you attacks me." As he approached them, Naruto simply grinned, causing them to separate so he could pass. Nobody dared attack because they knew that if they provoked him, he would instantly kill them all. On this day, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki were no longer physically attacked by the Konoha residents. Naruto kept on walking until he arrived at the academy. Gradually, a voice inside Naruto's head said, "Yan, ne, are you tired?" The blonde blushed as the Kyuubi moaned his name and said, "Yes, who wouldn't be tired after a long night of exhausting and sweaty night filled with various degrees of physical contact with you, Naruto-kun?" Naruto felt as though he needed a cold shower and thought, "Damn it, ne." The blonde blushed even more when the Biju said, "Stop what narukun," in a seductive manner. "That? You're using your voice like that?" As the Eiko grinned in his head, Naruto answered. "Ah, Naruto-kun, ah, Naruto-kun, harder, harder, ah," Eiko said, causing the blonde to stumble and fall to the ground. First, those around him either snickered at the demon boy's misfortune or gave him a strange look for tripping at nothing. "God damn it, ne," Naruto thought, shaking his fist at the Biju that was now laughing. After a short while, academy ignoring everyone else in the room, Naruto entered and proceeded to his usual spot. While continuing to talk to Eiko, he would have seen the Yamanaka heiress glaring at him with daggers for injuring one of her friends if he hadn't. As he continued to speak with Eiko, Naruto yawned and put both of his feet on top of his desk. "What will we be practicing for this evening, then?" asked the ship. The tenant replied, "Well, we'll split our time between ninjutsu and fuinjutsu. Will you teach me any of the Kodai fuinjutsu techniques you employed during our training? Before I begin teaching you any Kodai fuinjutsu, you must be at least mid-jokyu, as you are currently at a high shukyu level that borders on jokyu, according to Uzumaki standards." Recalling the various Uzumaki ranks for mastery of fuinjutsu, the blonde nodded. The majority of non-Uzumakis were ranked in Shokyu, elementary level, where they could only make simple seals, suppression seals, storage scrolls, and explosive tags. In terms of fuinjutsu skills, Naruto was currently at the Chukyu, intermediate level, which placed him on par with Jiraiya and Orochimaru. The majority of people in this level can use a variety of seals, including elemental absorption scrolls, high-end restriction seals, powerful explosive tags, and even Urashisho and Enfuin Kai that he borrowed from the Forbidden Sealing Scroll. The Azukiage and a select few of their elite Jonin were the only members of the last Jokyu, advanced class, elite class. However, since Konoha was destroyed, the full extent of our knowledge regarding their sealing abilities has been lost because Namikaze Minato created the Jutsu Shiki marks for the Hiraishin. Prior to his death, he was considered to be of the Jokyu class. "Good morning, class," Iruka said as he walked in, jolting the blonde out of her reverie. Attention class, last night my assistant instructor Mizuki was caught trying to steal the forbidden scroll. As of now he is being detained in the T&I department. Let this be a reminder to each and every one of you here. Being ninjas, we must always consider the fact that one day even our closest allies may come to betray us. When that happens, it will be our duty to use all power to try and stop them, Iruka said as he examined the new mutants. Before announcing the team placements, Iruka cleared his throat. Team 1 will be. Team 7 will be Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, and Kurama Yakumo. Your Jonin sensei is Hitaki Kakashi. Shit. As his tenant merely laughed at his misfortune, Naruto thought, at least I can trust Yakumo to watch my back, even though I'm with the Uchiha. Team 8 will be Aburame Shino, Inuzuka Kiba, and Hyuga Hinata. Yuichi Kurenai will be your Jonin sensei. Team 9 is still under circulation. Team 10 is Yamanaka Ino, Nara Shikamaru, and Akamichi Choji. Your Jonin sensei is Sarutobi Asuma. As he walked out of the room, Iruka said, that's all. Good luck with your days as a ninja. Now stay here and wait for your senseis to arrive. Naruto got up from his chair and took a seat next to Yakumo. Nice having you on the same team, Uzumaki-san, was how Yakumo appeared, somewhat taken aback when she saw the blonde sitting next to her. I told you long ago, call me Naruto. Naruto sighed. I guess I forgot. You forgot it the last 138. Wait, make that 139 times I told you. Yup, Yakumo replied, her tone tinged with mischief. Naruto grinned inwardly. Yakumo had truly changed from her previous self. Naruto found himself thinking about how they had first met. No flashback. Jutsu. The blonde let out a curse as Eiko called out. A year following Eiko's introduction as the 8-year-old Uzumaki, Naruto ran through the forests of Konoha following one of his borrowing excursions. It was pouring heavily. He was holding a bag of dango in his hand, and the blonde was doing his best to find some cover. In the end, Naruto found himself in a forest close to the clan estate, which he later discovered to be the Kurama family graveyard. Then, Naruto paused when he noticed a girl from his class standing by a grave marker, crying by herself in the pouring rain. For a moment, Naruto was reminded of his previous feelings of sadness as he simply gazed at the girl. Naruto took a gulp as he put a hand on the weeping girl's shoulder. Despite the fact that he still had problems trusting people and forming friendships because of a certain pink-haired girl who one day claimed to be his friend but then punched him and told him to avoid her. The blonde asked the girl who was crying, Anyo, are you alright? As though to say no, the girl shook her head while still in tears. No, the girl replied with a nod. What happened? Between sobs, the girl said, Oto-san and Ka-san are gone. Oji-san told me they won't come back anymore. The blonde approached the sobbing and trembling girl and gave her a hug, which was the only thing Naruto knew at the time that seemed to lift his spirits when he was feeling down. She struggled until she heard him speak, her eyes widening as she attempted to push the stranger away, only to discover that he was stronger than her. There, let it all out. Naruto rubbed the girl's back once. The girl with the blonde hair looked up and gazed. In fact, this was the first time she had ever touched her parents. She felt the warmth of another body for the first time in a long time. An embrace is a simple yet compassionate act that gives her a sense of security and love. Her face was already flushed when she looked at it quickly. As he continued to rub the brown-haired girl's back, the blonde said, your parents wouldn't be happy if you get sick because you stayed out in the rain. Staying out here, that is, until he heard both of their stomachs gurgle, which made him blush and release the girl. Do you want one? Naruto asked, offering the girl a stick of dango after turning around and dropping the bag of dango to the ground. After accepting the stick and starting to eat the dango, the girl nodded. This dango seemed to be the best thing she had ever tasted in her life. Though she wasn't sure why she glanced at the blonde eating next to her. The girl blushed when the blonde saw her and smiled at her with warmth and kindness. The girl whispered, Anyo, what's your name? Uzumaki Naruto, was the blonde's response after he finished another dango stick. The blonde said, how about you? What's your name? The girl answered, Kuma Yakumo is my name. Nice to meet you, Kurama-san, Naruto said, extending his hand and shaking it. Grabbing his extended hand, Yakumo shook it and said, nice to meet you, Uzumaki-san. Call me Naruto. There is no jutsu end to flashback. This time, the Biju yelled, causing her vessel to face palm. After meeting the following day, they started playing, training, and even borrowing once to get to know one another better. Before graduating a year ago, the two actually became close friends for some reason. Yakumo started to keep her distance from him. Naruto decided to keep the girl at bay because he had read a book about it and assumed it was just puberty or something, but in reality, he he was depressed without her. Naruto and Yakumo kept talking until the only people left in the room were a certain duckbutt and the two of them. After 3 hours the blonde said to Yakumo, "I wonder where the heck our sensei is." She responded, causing the blonde to perspire, probably sick for the day or got called in for a sudden mission, Uzumaki-san. Naruto's eyes widened. Goddamn frigging puberty, he thought, cursing his hormones as he felt a little uneasy and his tenant laughed even louder. Yeah, she really has changed, Naruto thought. She was more cheerful now than she was before and she has also really grown too, the curvy looking body, those low C-cup breasts, pretty green eyes, and those tender looking lips. Yakumo leaned in to give the blonde a brief glimpse of her cleavage and asked, "Is there something wrong, Uzumaki-san?" Naruto thought, fuck, he would do anything to avoid looking foolish in this circumstance. Just as Naruto needed to escape his situation, the door unexpectedly opened. Then he noticed a man in the typical Jonin attire, with the very familiar looking silver gravity-defying hair, wearing a face mask with his leaf headband slightly slanted to cover his left eye. "Nice of you to join us, Inu-san, or is it Inu-sensei now?" Naruto waved his hands at the man, thinking, for a man who came in late his timing is great. Before vanishing in a cloud of smoke, the man said, "Well, my first impression is that I hate all of you, and blonde don't call me by my old codename, meet up in the rooftops in 5 minutes." With a simple shrug, Naruto turned to face Yakumo and said, "Do you want a lift?" As the blonde opened the nearest window and picked up the Yakumo while holding her bridal style, he started to walk up towards the roof, leaving a wide-eyed, irate Uchiha in his wake. I would like that, Uzumaki-san," Yakumo said. When Naruto reached the roof and gently released Yakumo, he said, "Hello, Inu-san, still reading Ichaichaic." The man in the mask rubbed the back of his head and grinned. "It's good to see you too, Naruto." Yakumo and Naruto engaged in small talk as the three of them waited for the Uchiha, who arrived just in time, for about 4 minutes. Looking at his 3 genin, Kakashi said, "Now that everyone is here, let's start with introductions. Tell me your names, likes, dislikes, and dreams." "You first," he concluded, gesturing to Yakumo. "My name is Kurama Yakumo, I like painting, training my genjutsu, and dango I dislike." She wavered for a second before saying, "Nothing really in my dreams is to lead the Kurama clan into new heights." "Blonde, you're next," the masked nin said. "I enjoy eating ramen, working out, and watching fireworks at festivals. I don't like a lot of things, like Konoha, for instance, and my dream is to be an homage dabbeo," Naruto said. "Oh Kami, you're killing me today," the Kyuubi said, rolling around his mindscape, laughing even harder. "Peefed, you said it again." He instantly thought, "Shut up," as he turned back to Kakashi. "Really?" Kakashi inquired, perspiring. "Heck no, I don't really have any dreams, and if I did I'd say it's a secret, more like if I say my dream is to leave Konoha I'd have Anbus chasing after me." With a sigh, Kakashi turned to face the final member of the group and asked, "How about you, Emo?" "I like tomatoes, I hate fangirls, and my dream is to kill a certain man and restore my clan." Naruto thought, you'd have to be straight to do that, Uchiha, which made his tenant laugh even harder. "Yeah, good luck with that," Kakashi thought, recalling Itachi's incredible strength. "How about you, sensei, mind doing a small introduction?" said Naruto. With one of his trademark eye smiles, Kakashi responded, "My name is Hitaki Kakashi, and I enjoy a wide variety of things. Nothing in particular bothers me. What about my dreams? I'm not entirely certain." With different amounts of perspiration on their heads, his 3 genins simply gazed at him. "All right, team, let's get together at Training Ground 7 tomorrow." Before disappearing, leaving the 3 of them alone on the roof, Jonin said, "Come 5 in the morning, and I suggest you don't eat It's best to arrive at the training ground at 8 o'clock because I know Inu-san will be late by at least 3 hours." He also suggested that we skip meals, but he didn't give us the order. Naruto looked at Sasuke and Yakumo and said, "A hungry ninja is a dead ninja." Sasuke nodded. "And Dobi, why should I pay attention to you?" Uzumaki stretched around for a while before he heard his stomach growl. "No one's telling you to, Uchiha. It's up to you if you want to come in hungry for a test that will decide your future as a ninja," he said. Yakumo asked her 2 teammates, "Do you two want to grab lunch?" After giving it some thought, Naruto decided that although Yakumo was a pleasant companion, Uchiha was a downright mood killer, and he was about to decline the invitation when Sasuke caught him off guard. The Uchiha left the rooftop and headed for the door, saying, "I have no time for that because I have to train." Yakumo turned to Naruto and sighed, asking, "Are you also going?" She inquired. No, actually, I had intended to arrive, well, at least without the Uchiha, Naruto retorted. Where would you like to dine? Yakumo inquired of the blonde. Well, do you think Dango Eshiheim is okay? He asked her as he scratched the back of his head, oblivious to the blush that the nickname had caused on Yakumo's face. The Kurama heir smiled slightly and said, I haven't really eaten dango in a while, cough lies cough, so now show me the way. Sure, Naruto said with a small smile as he escorted Yakumo to Dangoya. The blonde blushed when Eiko said, oh, Naru-kun on his first date, I'm so proud of you. Kushi-tan must be crying tears of joy in heaven. Shut up, Naruto thought to himself as he and Yakumo strolled through Konoha's streets, ignoring the savage looks he received from the populace. The test day around 7:30 a.m., Naruto arrived at the training ground and saw the Uchiha sitting by himself beneath a tree, most likely mopping the area. As he approached the monument in the center of the training ground, Naruto thought, Oto-san, Oka-san, as he traced his fingers at the names of his parents. I came here second. I was expecting Yakumo to be here already. Naruto sighed sorrowfully before turning around and seeing Kurama enter the training ground. When Naruto and even Sasuke saw their teammate's new outfit, their eyes widened. Yakumo was wearing a white kimono with the front cut to her thighs, a dress that hung around her curves and showed off her well-defined body, particularly her C-cup breasts, and a purple sash that closed it tightly. She was also wearing black stockings that hung just below her knees and white shinobi slippers. 11. Stay quiet, Naru-kun, or a bug might fly into it, Eiko said, laughing at her ship's response. Trying not to blush, Naruto managed to say, looking good, Kumo. The Kurama heir bowed slightly and said, thank you, Uzumaki-san. As they continued to unwittingly disregard the Uchiha's existence, the two struck up a conversation. Grumbling in the stomach when Naruto and Yakumo turned to face the source of the sound, they saw a slightly flushed Sasuke. Don't tell me you didn't eat anything even though you were here since 5 in the morning. Naruto, who already knew the answer, asked. As the Uzumaki had predicted, yes, good morning, Kakashi said as he emerged in a cloud of smoke in the center of the training area, carrying a backpack. Kurama bowed lightly and said, Ohio sensei, while Naruto merely waved at Kakashi and the Uchiha grunted once more. So, before I explain the test, tell me why you two ate before coming here, Naruto and Yakumo, based on appearances. You suggested it. You didn't order us not to, Naruto said as he added, and as I said before, a hungry ninja is a dead ninja. The Jonin simply sighed to himself, yeah, this was Kushina-san's son. Kakashi grabbed his backpack and removed 2 bells and an alarm clock. He waved the 2 bells at the 3 genin while setting the alarm atop a training post. You have until noon to take these from me. Those who are unable to receive a bell will be returned to the academy for a year. The Jonin tied the bell on his belt and remarked, since there are only 2, at least one of you will be sent back. Play immortal. 2 steps from hell, oh, and remember, the masked Jonin continued, come with me with the intention of killing. Start, Kakashi said, raising an eyebrow as he watched everyone else but Naruto hide. So you do realize the test has begun, don't you, Naruto? Kakashi asked, pulling out an orange book and starting to read it. Well, hiding from an elite Jonin is really pointless. Is that Ichi-Cha paradise? As he started to consider how he could take the bell, Naruto asked. In response, the silver-haired Jonin simply grinned and said, yes, it is. Are you also a fan? Not really, but I met the author a few years back, who knew that one of the strongest ninja in the elemental nations wrote smut. You got to know Jiraiya-sama? Kakashi inquired curiously. Yeah, he even gave me some instructions about a certain jutsu that the Yondaime use. And what is that jutsu? The Jonin inquired in an attempt to persuade Naruto to demonstrate his skills further. The blonde replied, if you give me a bell, I'll tell you. Kakashi perspired and said, no. Naruto responded, well, it was worth a shot, as he sent chakra to his legs and ran in the direction of the Jonin. As he prepared for the blonde, the masked Jonin declared, first is taijutsu. Nanaya Ken. Kai no Saigo. Opening with one of his trademark Nanaya Ken techniques, Naruto uttered those words. His taijutsu is good, it's fast, precise, and strong. I could tell he held back in his opening attack. If he wanted to, that burst of wind in the end could have cut me in pieces, Kakashi thought as he ducked a knife hand aimed at his neck and threw a kick at Naruto, hitting the blonde's stomach and pushing him back. The Jonin simply backstepped to avoid the attack, but was taken by surprise when a sharp wave of wind struck him, pushing him a few feet back. After putting his book back in his pouch, Kakashi remarked, Well, that was really good, Naruto. Oh, are you going to believe me, sensei? A little pleased that Kakashi was going to step it up, Naruto answered. The Jonin retorted, "You're not that good, you still suck." The blonde assumed his Shiryo stance and said, "Well, then let me prove you wrong." "Your son has grown up strong, sensei," the Jonin said, grinning beneath his mask. As he charged at Naruto, he punched the blonde, but it was slapped away and countered with a thrust that went to his stomach. Naruto grinned as he believed his attack had been successful, but as his arm passed through a log, his eyes widened. Kakashi uttered the words, "Konoha Hisatsu, Senengarashi," as he materialized behind Naruto, poised to employ the notorious move directed at Naruto's butt. Naruto thought, "Oh fuck no, not again, never again," as he started going through hand seals after switching places with a log using a kawarimi. "Kunai Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," was the silent statement Naruto made as the 5 explosive kunai multiplied to 25. Naruto appeared a few feet away from Kakashi and instantly threw 5 kunais wrapped with explosive tags towards the Jonin. "Art is amazing. Katsu. I wonder where the hell that came from," Naruto said as the kunais struck Kakashi and the area around the Jonin, covering it in a flurry of explosions. This caused another blonde who had recently been recruited into a particular organization to sneeze. "How the hell is this clanless Dobi this strong? That's supposed to be my strength mine. I needed to kill Itachi," Sasuke thought angrily from behind one of the bushes. Naruto's eyes widened as he unsealed his tanto just in time to block the shurikens and kunais heading his way. He then jumped up to a tree to avoiding a pair of hands coming out of the ground trying to grab him. "What the hell is up with people always trying to pull me underground?" Naruto thought as he landed in a branch of the tree tanto placed defensively in front of him. The blonde shinobi threw a kunai and watched as Kakashi pulled himself out of the ground and catch the kunai before it even hit the Jonin. The Jonin then vanished in a burst of speed. Naruto turned around and used his tanto to block a kunai strike coming from Kakashi. Naruto clicked his tongue in frustration as he was getting pushed back by the Jonin. "Nanaya Ken. Seisho no ya," Naruto thought as he sent a knife hand towards Kakashi's stomach only for the Jonin to grab his wrist, lift him up and throw him overhead before throwing a 5 shurikens at the Genin. Naruto flipped mid-air just in time to see the shurikens and block it with his tanto. Naruto landed on the ground and was able to backstep just in time to dodge the Jonin's roundhouse kick. "Katen. Gokakyu no Jutsu." Sasuke exhaled a ball of fire towards Kakashi and Naruto. Finally, the last Uchiha, running out of patience and brain cells for that matter, leapt out of his hiding place and started going through some hand seals. "You're pretty good, Naruto," Kakashi remarked, grinning. "You're good too, Inu-sens," was all Naruto could say when he noticed a ball of fire that Sasuke was directing toward he and Kakashi. Naruto observed as Kakashi dodged the jutsu that was now ironically aimed at him by using kawarimi. As he used his dojutsu, Naruto thought, "Son of a..." Keep in mind that your physical and spiritual energies make up your Naruto chakra. It is a part of everyone and everything in this world, including you. Nevertheless, you ought to be able to cut through it. As he traced along a vertical line on the fireball, slicing it in two before instantly closing his dojutsu, Naruto recalled. Jutsus are made of chakra, the energy of a living being. As long as you can see the end of the jutsu, you can destroy it, but be careful, Naru-kun. The stronger the jutsu you try to kill, the more strain you'll get. Uchiha. What the devil, you prick, are you attempting to murder me? With a slight ache in his head, Naruto said angrily. "Dobi, what are you discussing?" the arrogant jerk retorted. "You should see that being killed by Uchiha is an honor." As he emerged behind Sasuke, Kakashi angrily remarked, "That wasn't nice, Sasuke." As he attacked the Jonin, Sasuke remarked, "Screw being nice, I'm a Uchiha." As he started to battle the Uchiha, Kakashi remarked, "Well, I guess since Sasuke is a bit too excited, it's time to move to the second part, ninjutsu." "Meh," Naruto uttered as he disappeared through Shunshin in search of Yakumo. "Moru Shuriken no Mai," Sasuke said, confident that this jutsu would at least inflict some damage on the Jonin, and he immediately threw a few shurikens at it before performing some hand seals and firing another fireball at it. Kakashi dodged the attack with kawarimi and just shook his head. To avoid being caught off guard by the masked ninja, Sasuke pulled out a kunai and started scanning his surroundings with as many senses as he could. As he threw the kunai at Kakashi, who emerged from some bushes and ran in his direction, Sasuke thought, "There." The Uchiha assumed his counterattack-oriented interceptor stance and started fighting the Jonin. Alongside Yakumo as she watched the battle between Sasuke and Kakashi, Yakumo was kneeling on the ground and hiding behind a bush. She wasn't particularly shocked by the blonde's skill because she always knew that he was much stronger than anyone in their age group. You can't defeat an elite Jonin by yourself, idiot Uchiha or not, Yakumo reflected. She sighed as she started to consider what Kakashi had said about this test. Something didn't feel right, and she had a gut feeling that it had a deeper significance. Yakumo said, "Hello Uzumaki-san," as she sensed Naruto emerge from behind her. "Have you deduced what this test means?" Naruto asked the heir of Kurama. Almost," was Yakumo's response as she emerged from hiding. As he waited for Yakumo to figure it out, the blonde said, "I'll give you a hint, each one of us has a 33% chance of passing the test." Kurama's eyes widened as she understood the test's meaning. It's teamwork, isn't it? Each of us has a 33% chance of passing individually, but if we work together we have 99% chance of passing. Make that 66%, as I don't see any possible of the Uchiha swallowing his pride and working with us. "So it's just me and you?" the brown-haired genin asked. "Yes, are you ready to support me in my fight against Kakashi?" Naruto questioned Team 7's lone female member. "Are you planning anything?" The blonde simply grinned as he explained his strategy to Yakumo. Alongside Kakashi, Sasuke screamed, "Kaden! Gokaku no Jutsu!" as he used more chakra in this attack, producing a larger fireball than the ones before it. He is pretty strong for his age, but he's weaker than Naruto and Itachi when he was the same age. If only he learned how to work with his teammates or let go of that stupid Uchiha arrogance, he'd be getting stronger faster, Kakashi said, shaking his head again. If it didn't work the first time, it's not going to be working anytime soon, he thought before using Kawarimi. After reappearing behind the Uchiha, Kakashi performed the Tiger Hand Seal and then spat out a few tiny balls of condensed water. "Sweden. Teppodama," Kakashi said as he quickly struck the final Uchiha all over his body. Even though the copy nin had made sure that the shots were not lethal, but they still hurt. He watched as Sasuke collapsed to the ground, now unconscious, and he just kept shaking his head in dismay as he seized him and started tying him up on one of the posts. "Obito, I wonder if you would be proud if you see what the Uchiha has become," Kakashi thought as he completed tying the Uchiha up. After tying Sasuke in one of the training posts, Kakashi was wondering where the other two were when a kunai was thrown at him. He tried to dodge the kunai as Naruto leapt out of some bushes and tried to grab one of the bells, saying, "Third part genjutsu," just before making the most foolish mistake of the day. Megan. Narakumi no Jutsu was the first thing. Kakashi went through some hand seals, but Naruto smirked and exploded. When Kakashi jumped back to avoid the blast, his eyes widened, and he heard Yakumo make a tiger hand seal. "Shit," was all he could think as he heard the words, "Kokwangyo no Jutsu," come out of her mouth, and then the world went dark for the Jonin. Using his other sense, Kakashi ducked and kicked forward after hearing a loud feminine yelp from the darkness. Then, as the cart wheeled to the side, he was able to avoid several shurikens before he pulled out a kunai and threw it in the direction the shurikens were coming from. Then, he heard a lot of footsteps approaching him, 10 distinct footsteps, to be exact, coming from various directions. "Bunshin," Kakashi thought as he approached the closest sound source, only to be startled when he struck something solid. His darkened eyes widened, as he started to dodge the attacks, he said, and as he kept pumping chakra into his other senses, he flipped back from the sounds and heard a voice muttering, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," from a distance. He then heard a few more footsteps approaching him, and Kakashi remained motionless, feeling about 20 clones encircling him. He then increased the flow of chakra to his nose and ears, ready to counterattack the moment the clones rushed into attack, until the clones began to explode loudly, forcing the Jonin to Kawarimi to a random location while holding his now injuring ears. Upon witnessing Kakashi land just a few feet away, Yakumo grinned and proceeded to go through some hand seals before pointing at Kakashi with her middle and index fingers held close together. "Raiden. Genso Kaminari," she said, launching a single blue lightning bolt that struck the distracted Jonin. "AAHHHHHHHHH," was the cry of agony that Kakashi let out as he collapsed to his knees, feeling as though 1,000 lightning strikes had struck him. Naruto was waiting for this moment, and the genin hurried in, slicing the bell off Kakashi and taking it. Naruto sheeted and sealed his tanto after throwing the bells at Yakumo, signaling her to free Kakashi from the genjutsu. The brown-headed man nodded and complied, then released the still-conscious Sasuke just as the alarm went off. Having that clan-less Dobi Naruto outperform him was already annoying, but now even the girl outperformed him. Sasuke just gritted his teeth as Yakumo let him go. Obviously not happy that both of his teammates outperformed him, he looked down at the ground, furious, thinking, how the hell am I going to kill Itachi if I can't even pass a single test on my own? Naruto looked at the Jonin, who was slowly rising, and remarked, looks like we pass Inu-sensei. As he started to stretch his body around in search of any obvious damage, the Jonin said, remind me never to underestimate you guys again. So, to whom will you present the bells? When he saw that Kurama had handed the 2 bells to Naruto and Sasuke, the latter of whom had just been struck on the head by one of them, Kakashi asked him. Naruto then handed his bell to Yakumo, and Sasuke, who at last had the bright idea, handed his bell to Naruto. As he gradually allowed the recuperating Jonin to stand alone, Naruto remarked, the hidden meaning of the test sensei was to look underneath the underneath. It was about working together in the end so we can all succeed. Written here, the man said, drawing the attention of all 3 genins, as the Jonin started to make their way to the stone monument in the center of the training ground. Are the names of all the heroes who died in the line of duty for Konoha, my best friend, my teammate, my father, my sensei, and his wife, all of their names are written in this stone. He turned to face his 3 genins, saying, although I want all of you to be heroes, I don't want any of you to die before your time. Trust and protect each other, and work as a team to survive. If only I did back then. He trailed off, turning to face Naruto in an attempt to shift the conversation. Who taught you Bunshin Daibakuha and Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto? The Jonin inquired. I discovered it on my own. I was searching for a substitute for Bunshin no Jutsu, because I am incapable of performing it, regardless of how well I control my chakras. After reading about solid clones one day at the library, I was able to recreate the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. After a few days of experimentation. As for the Daibakuha, I saw it from Weasel-san a long time ago. When Itachi showed the young blonde the exploding clones, Kakashi's eyebrows went up a little, but he still managed to replicate a kinjutsu using only the hazy details from a few books. When Kakashi heard Yakumo, he simply sighed and thought, you really are your Minato-sensei and Kushina-san's child, Naruto? Yakumo inquired, so Kakashi-sensei, does that mean we pass? He smiled and said, yes, you do. Let's meet up here tomorrow at 7 AM so we can start taking our missions, before disappearing into a whirlpool of leaves. Yakumo asked, so you guys want to go out and celebrate? And was met with a nod from Naruto and a HN from the Uchiha, who was either genuinely happy for once or simply extremely hungry. As her 2 teammates left the training field to celebrate, the Kurama heir smiled and stepped between them. After a month, the office of the Hokage, the statement, Team 7 reporting in from a successful mission, was made by Kakashi as Yakumo gave her owner a curiously calm Tora. Good job trapping that cat in a genjutsu, Kumo-san. The Uchiha agreed that the cat was a demon from hell, saying, HN. Kurama bowed slightly and said, thank you, Uzumaki-san, Uchiha-san. As he examined the available missions Iruka was giving him, the old Kage asked, so, may I ask what mission you would like to do next? Maybe some weeding, babysitting, or cleaning the Inuzuka's kennels. The Uchiha cried out, no, I demand for a better mission, one befitting that of a Uchiha, he stated. The room's reactions to this were mixed. Naruto appeared amused. Kakashi was perspiring. Yakumo was palming his face. Iruka received a tick mark, and Sarutobi, but. The Kage released some ki and asked, are you ordering me, Uchiha? He had already had enough shit from the civilian council and didn't need a haughty genin to defeat him. While Yakumo was beginning to have trouble breathing, Sasuke became quiet and began to shake. Naruto, on the other hand, was motionless, seemingly dismissing the Kage-level murderous intent. For once, the Uchiha realized his error and made the sensible decision to say, sorry, Hokage-sama. When Naruto decided it was time to speak up, he cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention as the Hokage calmed down and took in the information. Naruto remarked, although I do not like the way Uchiha worded it, I do agree that it is about time for us to take on harder missions. We have already done 40 D-rank missions, Hokage-sama, and are already qualified to undertake the C-rank mission. The Hokage let out a sigh and turned to face Team 7's leader. So are they ready for it, Kakashi? He asked. Kakashi said, my team is already ready to take a C-rank mission. The Hokage nodded. Naruto is definitely ready. Yakumo is too. Sasuke, however, well, I'd need to watch over him, but I guess we're good to go. Okay, your mission is to escort a client to Nami no Kuni. You can come in now, the Hokage replied. When the 3 genins turned to face the door, they saw an elderly bearded man carrying a bottle of alcohol. So I get a bunch of brats as an escort, huh? "Well, I'm Tazuna, the super bridge builder. I expect you guys to protect me till I get to my country and finish the bridge," the man replied as he left the room. As he vanished and left his students, Kakashi said, "Meet up in the front gates at 2 hours." After 2 hours, when the three genin finally came together, Naruto was essentially unchanged from 2 hours prior, while Yakumo and Sasuke were carrying backpacks. "Yo, ready GU," Kakashi said, walking up to the group Tazuna, who was standing just behind him. The Jonin questioned, "Naruto, where's your gear?" as Naruto merely withdrew his right sleeve to reveal an elaborate seal to them. As he rolled his sleeve back down, Naruto answered, "I got everything I need here." "You know how to use Fuinjutsu?" the surprised maid Jonin asked, raising an eyebrow. "Do you remember what my last name is, Inu-san?" Naruto asked, staring at him blankly. "Of course he knows how to seal stuff using Fuinjutsu. He's an Uzumaki for Kami's sake," Kakashi said, nodding, but he was face-palming inside. Sasuke interrupted, saying, "Teach me how to do that, Uzumaki." Waving at Yakumo, Naruto casually responded, "Were you saying something?" "That's my student," Kakashi thought, clenching his fist in his mind as a chibi, resisting the urge to snicker at what the Uzumaki did. "Well then, let's get going. Sasuke, you take point, Naruto take left, Yakumo you take right." As he left Konoha for the first time, Naruto nodded. "Are you excited, Naru-kun?" the Biju inquired of her vessel. Naruto responded, "Actually, yes, this is the first time I actually left Konoha, and it feels, somehow liberating," as he and his group escorted Tazuna to Nami no Kuni. The Biju said slowly, "Well, then just let me know if something exciting happens." Then she abruptly stopped talking, which caused the Uzumaki to cut off the mental connection. Traveling Naruto noticed a puddle in the middle of the road and began to perspire after walking for a few hours. When it had rained for a month, there was a frigging puddle that was leaking a significant amount of ki. "Nay, take a look at that," Eiko said. "Wow, they must be retarded," and her ship nodded in agreement. Naruto glanced at Yakumo and Kakashi, who both saw the genjutsu was weak. Taking a deep breath, Naruto made the decision to go all out right away because this was his first time fighting a real ninja in real time. As he and his team passed the puddle, Naruto was already pumping a tremendous amount of chakra to his legs and channeling chakra to his left hand in preparation for unsealing his tanto. Yakumo uttered the words, "Dog, snake, monkey, ox, tiger, Megan, Jubaku Satsu," as they passed the puddle, right before the two Mist Demon brothers came out of hiding and attempted, or more accurately, failed, to attack the Jonin. When the two brothers leapt out of the puddle to launch a coordinated attack on Kakashi, hoping to take him out first, Gozu abruptly stopped, causing his brother Maizu to stumble. He only said, "What the hell, go," before he started to feel excruciating pain around his right arm. When he looked to see what was causing it, he discovered that an arm wound had already been cauterized. He clutched his arm and screamed in pain. When he turned to look behind him to see who had attacked, he saw the blonde child who had been there earlier standing there with Kaden chakra flowing through the blade tanto drawn. When the blonde cut off his other arm, he screamed out again, and the blonde gave him an indifferent look. The man crawled in the ground, now sobbing in agony, and turned to face his brother, pleading for assistance. He saw his brother motionless before the girl with the brown hair. He was speaking to her as though he were responding to all of her inquiries. He knew his brother was done when he saw the girl nod and draw a kunai. He was horrified to see the girl slit his brother's throat from behind. His head was cut off his body, and that was the last thing he saw. After finishing with one of the two brothers, Naruto let out a sigh. Since it was his first time killing someone, he questioned whether he should feel anything. Why didn't he feel anything? Was killing that simple? Simply hack and slash until everything is gone? Was life really so worthless? With a simple shake of his head, Naruto put an end to the idea. Then, with a quick motion, he took the blood out of his tanto, sheathed it, and sealed it back into his left hand. When Naruto turned around, he saw a pale Tazuna, a seething Sasuke, a slightly wide-eyed Kakashi, and Yakumo still gazing at her first kill. That was cruel, Kakashi reflected as soon as he saw the puddle. He was prepared to use Kawarimi, but two of his students reacted before the two could even attack him. Before she killed him, Yakumo was able to question him after trapping him in a genjutsu. However, by literally chopping off the man's entire arm, then slicing the other arm and beheading the man, Naruto was able to quickly disarm his opponent. The fact that his student accomplished that in less than 7 seconds alarmed Kakashi. "What the hell, Dobi?" was Sasuke's final exclamation, a little dazed by what he had just witnessed. As he removed a paintbrush, a small bottle of ink made from his blood, and a scroll from one of his pockets, Naruto simply shook his head. Naruto kept putting chakra into the scroll while ignoring Sasuke and started drawing symbols on it. After a few seconds, ignoring everyone's glances, Naruto got to his feet, took Mizu's head, and sealed it in the scroll. After approaching the now dead Gozu, Naruto cut off the man's head, sealed it inside the scroll, and threw the body next to his brothers. Naruto used a Kaden Gokakyu no Jutsu to burrow the two bodies into ashes while creating a few hand seals. As he tossed the scroll in the direction of his sensei, Naruto remarked, "Kakashi-sensei, catch, you know what to do with it." "Too slow, Naru-kun," the Biju remarked. "If you hadn't allowed him to crawl on the ground, you could have killed the man in 3-7 seconds. Kill them more quickly the next time, or we'll have to increase your training." "Hi Eiko ne," the blonde said right away, knowing that Ane was there but not wanting his already terrible training to get any harder, if that was even possible. While he was looking at Tazuna, Kakashi noticed the scroll nodding at the blonde. "I'll make sure to give you and Yakumo the reward money," the masked Jonin said, jolting Naruto out of his reverie. "Tazuna-san, you have some explaining to do." "Yes." Sweating profusely, the elderly man inquired, still uneasy due to the blonde's cruelty. "Why are 2 missing nins of the Chunin level after you?" the Jonin inquired. After a lengthy explanation, "So let me get this straight," Kakashi said before continuing, "Gato, the president of Gato's trading company, is after your life, and from the info Yakumo gathered has hired Momochi Zabuza, the Kirigakure no Kijin and one of the Kiri no Shinobi Katana Shichinen Shu to kill you, and your paying us is for a C-rank mission because Nami no Kuni is dirt poor because of Gato, which will change after you build the bridge." At Kakashi's explanation, Tazuna gave a nod. "Team 7, let's head back to Konoha," said the Jonin. "This is an A-rank mission and I'm afraid that our team will not be able to handle it," he continued. The Uchiha responded, "No, I say we continue this mission." He was determined not to let his sensei deny him the opportunity to grow stronger because this mission had suddenly become worthy of Uchiha. "I agree with him, sensei, we already accepted the mission, might as well see it through," said Naruto. "The world must be ending," Eiko exclaimed, pinching her cheeks. "Wow, you agreed with the Uchiha twice in one day." Yakumo, who was a little pale, said, "We should continue," as Naruto ignored the Biju and decided he might need to speak with her later. The one time they agree with each other, the one time. Kakashi sighed in acceptance of his loss, turning to face Tazuna. "We expect to be paid for an A-rank mission after the bridge is completed and Gato is removed." "Yes, I'm grateful." The bridge builder was pleased to hear that the Konoha nin was prepared to assist him. After walking for a few more hours, the team finally found one of Tazuna's friends, who agreed to row them to Nami no Kuni. The team then disembarked from the boat and made their way to Tazuna's house. When Naruto heard a rustling sound coming from some bushes, he stopped walking and threw a kunai at the bush, causing a white hair to leap out. "Its coat is white, it should be brown since it's spring," Naruto said, his eyes widening as he heard a faint whizzing sound. "Come on down." While everyone else ducked down and barely avoided the Zanbatsu that flew through before colliding with a tree and becoming trapped in it, Naruto screamed out as he pushed Tazuna forward. As Team 7 turned their heads, they saw a tall, muscular man without brows, with black hair that was spiky and black. He had bandages around the lower half of his face, a forehead protector sideways on his head, and baggy pants with striped patterns. He was also wearing leg warmers that matched the Zanbatsu's appearance and stripped wrist warmers that reached his elbows. "Oh, no, Kakashi, Sharingan." As he gazed at the group, the man remarked, "It's no wonder the demon brothers failed." Gazing at the aforementioned Jonin, Sasuke thought, "Sharingan no Kakashi." As he prepared to battle the missing nin, the Jonin said, "Sorry Zabuza, but it was my students who killed them." "Oh, some impressive gakis you have there then. Now Kakashi, why don't you hand over the man so I can kill him and we can part ways?" the missing nin offered. Kakashi responded, "Sorry, can't do that," as he shocked Sasuke by revealing his Sharingan and lifting his leaf forehead protector. As he shunshined atop the nearby body of water, the missing nin grinned. Play Sawano Hiroyuki's dragon rises. The 3 genin instantly surrounded Tazuna and positioned themselves defensively in front of him as Zabuza uttered the words, "Kirigakure no Jutsu," as a dense fog began to envelop the area. Kakashi warned, "Be careful, he's an expert in Sirento Kiringu," as the fog grew thicker. "Which should I target? The liver, lungs, spine, kidneys, heart, brain, jugular vein, clavicle vein, or both?" From the mist that was enveloping the entire area in a tremendous amount of ki, strong enough to make Sasuke and Yakumo think about killing themselves in order to escape it, came a menacing voice. Die, was the missing nin's command as he materialized between Tazuna and the three genin who were prepared to attack the bridge builder. Naruto was already pumping a lot of chakra on his legs before the battle even started, so he unlocked his tanto and jumped towards the missing nin, coating it with futon chakra. The blonde slashed downward, surprising Zabuza, and the man had to block the blow with his sword, which made him chirp a little. Zabuza narrowed his eyes as he watched Naruto's tanto, thinking, futon chakra coating his blade to make it sharper. Never seen a genin do that before. Interesting, as he kicked the blonde away before swinging his sword to the left to block a copy nin attack. After a brief exchange of blows between the two rank ninjas, Zabuza was able to strike Kakashi with the blunt side of his blade, sending the man into the water. In order to imprison the copy nin, the missing nin created a massive sphere of water around his arm and said, Suiro no Jutsu. He then created 3 Mizu Bunshins, and sent them to kill everyone. Sasuke pulled out a Fuma Shuriken, while Yakumo pulled out a kunai and stood in front of Tazuna. Naruto assumed his Shiryu stance, his extended arm holding the tanto in reverse grip. As she started going through some hand seals, Yakumo thought, we just need one good blow to dispel them. Megan Hanagasumi, as the Zabuza clone that was on its way to her became trapped inside a huge flower bud that closed around him and exploded, dispelling it, she said, throwing a kunai with an explosion tag on it as it abruptly stopped. However, Naruto and Sasuke found it more difficult to deal with their opponents. Even though the clone's power was only a fraction of the Zabuza's, they were still marginally stronger than both of them. Eventually, Naruto defeated the pursuing clone by making a cage bunshin and using it in place of himself, causing it to explode as soon as the water clone was within range. Naruto's eyes widened as he tackled Sasuke, narrowly avoiding the blade intended to decapitate the genin, while Sasuke's eyes widened upon realizing that the normally indifferent Dobi had only shielded him. As he witnessed Zabuza producing 3 more water clones, the Uzumaki nodded to the Uchiha and said, as much as I hate to admit it, Sasuke, we need to work together or else we will all die. Naruto created a shadow clone and started going through some hand seals, saying, okay, let's go. Sasuke, let's light the asshole up. Sasuke nodded and proceeded to go through the same hand seals. Whether Uchiha was arrogant or not, he had no time for that at this point. He would much rather work with Dobi and live than not and die. Kaden Gokakyu no Jutsu, was the statement made by Naruto and Sasuke as they both shot Zabuza and his clones with fireballs. The Naruto clone exclaimed, Fuden, Daitapa, as he unleashed a burst of wind that, when combined with the 2 fireballs, created a tremendous conflagration that drove the water clones away and made their way directly toward the missing nin. In order to escape being burned to death, Zabuza used Kawarimi and relinquished the water prison. Before he could cut the blonde in 2, he reappeared behind Naruto, but the Uzumaki flipped him off and exploded. As the blonde kicked him in the direction of Sasuke, who was able to land a few punches before kicking him to Kakashi, who was already in the middle of his hand seals, Zabuza was shocked to discover a foot to his face after being blown back a few feet in the air. Kakashi's Sweden Suiryuden no Jutsu caused Zabuza's eyes to widen. Zabuza clenched his teeth and was fortunate enough to create a water clone in time to replace it and avoid the dragon, but he was unable to escape a few flaming shurikens that struck him in the back. After a few backflips, Zabuza landed a good 15 feet away from Konoha nins. The masked nin brought his sword up and ran towards the 3 ninjas who were all performing hand seals. The 3 of them fired a ball of fire, creating a huge inferno that was headed towards him. Zabuza briefly cancelled the chakra on the soles of his feet and started performing hand seals before firing off a few water-based dragons at the 3 ninjas. He saw the blonde use Kawarimi almost immediately, while the silver-haired Jonin grabbed the duck butt-haired one and threw him away before using the Kawarimi as well. Whether exhausted or not, Zabuza grinned underwater because this was far more enjoyable than he had anticipated. Smiling beneath his mask, the nin charged in with his clones after channeling some chakra in the water to create at least 6 water clones as he rose from the lake's depths. Kakashi's eye widened as he went into overdrive, destroying all 3 clones before sprinting towards Yakumo and Tazuna. He and 2 other clones started attacking Kakashi while he sent the other 3 to attack the blonde, the duckhead, and the bridge builder. The swordsman used Kawarimi just before he was about to attack Kakashi. With a sly smile, Zabuza pulled out his sword, prepared to decapitate the bridge builder and the kunoichi until he was encircled by leaves. The masked nin heard Megan Genso Kiri before he started to see visions of the past, all the horrors he had gone through, and the people he had killed standing in front of him, seemingly returning for a brief moment to haunt him. Glaring at the copy nin in front of him, Zabuza was about to swing his sword one-handed to cleave the man into, but the copy nin kicked him in the gut. Pushing him away, Zabuza gritted his teeth and stopped the flow of chakra to his body, then abruptly released a stronger flow of his chakra in order to disrupt the genjutsu. Genjutsu Kai. The missing nin said just in time to stop a kunai aimed at his heart with the palm of his hand. The missing nin, panting with exhaustion, started to go through some hand signals but was stopped when a gust of wind from the blonde genin hit him in the side. Futon. Daitapa, the blonde said, attracting Zabuza's attention. Kakashi's use of Sweden Daibakufu no Jutsu sent a tidal wave towards Zabuza, who glared at the blonde unable to use Kawarimi. The swordsman placed his sword in front of him and pumped chakra all over his body in an attempt to lessen the damage of the jutsu. Eventually, the wave passed, revealing a severely damaged Zabuza in front of the Konoha nins. Kakashi, you have some really nice gakis there, would you mind giving me the blonde one? Zabuza asked half seriously. I swear I'll take good care of him, because the child had a high risk of dying. With a deadpan tone, Kakashi answered, sorry but no. Unfortunately, the missing nin said that right before he was struck in the neck by two senbons. The hunter nin, who had black hair with two locks falling on the side of the head and the rest in a bun, was wearing a green haori and light brown platoon sandals. Thank you for your help, Konoha nin, said a masked figure as the nin appeared in front of the Konoha nin. As he shinshined with Zabuza's body, the hunter nin said, I have been hunting for this man for a while now, thank you for the help. He then said, I must dispose of this. Oh great, Kakashi just fainted, Naruto thought as he looked at Sasuke. Well, that was interesting, he said, breaking the silence, only to hear a loud thud coming from beside him. As I carry sensei, is my mind taking point? The blonde inquired. As he led the group to Tazuna's house per the man's instructions, the Uchiha said, sure. After roughly 10 minutes of walking, they reached it, where Tazuna's daughter Tsunami met them, ushered them inside, and led them to a room where Naruto laid the now conscious but still tired Kakashi. The genin asked his tenant, that guy is still alive, isn't he? I assume you've read about how hunter nins work, so you should be aware that it's standard procedure to dispose of the body at the scene of the target's death. Naruto looked at everyone in the room, including Kakashi, who was sleeping in a futon with Yakumo, Sasuke, and Tazuna seated nearby, and thought, well shit, not only do we have Zabuza to deal with, we also have with that fake hunter nin. He glanced to his side and saw Tsunami standing on the side. Zabuza's still alive, was Naruto's unexpected statement that caught everyone's attention. Uzumaki-san, why do you say that? Yakumo inquired, interested in her friend's declaration. Think about it, what was used to kill Zabuza? Senbon needles, Sasuke uttered as his eyes grew wide with insight. As everyone's focus turned to him, Kakashi declared, Naruto is right. There is a high chance that the hunter nin was an accomplice of his. How are you aware? Sasuke inquired, looking at Kakashi. Naruto responded, if it was a real hunter nin, he would have burned Zabuza's body right in front of us. Aside from the team exercises you've required us to complete for the past month, will you finally teach us anything else? Kakashi simply grinned as Naruto asked him. Yep, I need to get you guys strong enough to at least face off against that hunter nin, while I deal with Zabuza. Sasuke grinned because he now had the opportunity to learn something that could help him kill Itachi in the future, and his sensei was finally going to do something constructive for once. The discussion paused when a young boy, Inari or something, entered the room and began to rant about how Gato would kill them all and that there were no heroes. Naruto ignored the child, not really caring. So, what precisely are you going to teach us? A distant voice said, don't ignore me. From beneath the futon, Naruto noticed the Jonin tense up. It'll be a surprise, the Jonin replied. Okay, as long as it's not something stupid like tree climbing that we should have learned weeks ago, then I'm fine. I'll assume that was the strategy. Shrugging, the blonde picked up his friend and asked Tsunami where he could bring her, which the woman graciously did by pointing him to another room Naruto's side, but was startled out of his annoyance when he heard a loud thud again. He turned around to see Yakumo on the ground, already unconscious. It has been a long day, and Yakumo wasn't really one to have much stamina. Feeling a little worn out, he spread out a futon and tucked Yakumo in. The blonde chose to lean against a wall and drift off to sleep. The following day, as she was hyperventilating, Yakumo jumped out of her futon, her eyes wide. I can't be right. Kurenai-san and the Hokage said they sealed it up. As she struggled to catch her breath, she glanced around the room and noticed a familiar yellow hair. She rubbed her eyes a little as she noticed the young Uzumaki sleeping soundly back against a wall. The blonde said, Morning, Kumo-san. with her eyes still closed. "Ohio Uzumaki-san. Are you sure you won't give Naruto a call?" According to her, "Who knows," as she extended her arms. "Are you alright?" the blonde inquired. "What are you discussing?" she answered. "The fact that you killed someone," was the blonde's statement that instantly frozen Kurama. "Yeah, I'm okay with it, don't lie, you were still looking pale even when we were fighting Zabuza. Are we Uzumaki-san, or are we just being perceptive? Just remember you're not a monster for killing, we're ninjas, and we kill for a living," said Naruto with a somber and arid smile. "I'm not, no need to act strong, it's just the two of us here." She smiled and said, "I need to be strong, I can't have myself crying over simple things like this anymore, Uzumaki-san." With a, "You really have grown up," response, the blonde answered. She said to the blonde, "Everyone grows up at some point." He reasoned that some were earlier than others. He stood up and walked to the door, saying, "You should get ready. Kakashi-sensei will probably come call for us soon." Hearing her whisper, "Thank you," made him smile. He said, "You're welcome," and walked out of the room. After breakfast a few hours later, Kakashi gathered his genin and led them to the woods surrounding Nami no Kuni. He then demonstrated how to perform the tree climbing exercise, drawing a startled response from the Uchiha, while Yakumo and Naruto gave him a completely uninterested look. "Can I leave to train by myself, Inu-sensei?" the blonde inquired. "Let me guess you already know tree walking, then how about, you know what, I wouldn't be surprised anymore, just guard Tazuna while he's making the bridge. How about you?" The masked nin gazed at the Kurama heir and asked. "I've already mastered it, but I still need to work on my water walking," she replied. Since he could use this time to teach the Uchiha some things, he thought, "Well, you can go with Naruto then." As he watched his students leave, Kakashi remarked, "See you later, Naruto, Yakumo." With a nod, the blonde created several clones to accompany Tazuna as he left, prepared to train with Yakumo. "So, do you require assistance with water walking?" the blonde asked absently. "Oh, so Uzumaki-san wishes to witness my soaking?" Yakumo inquired in an attempt to elicit a response from the blonde. The blonde smirked inwardly as he saw the Kurama heir blush and said, "I would be lying if I said I didn't." That evening the two genins looked at their teammate who was already eating, trying to refuel as quickly as possible, and after an entire afternoon of water walking, Naruto somehow persuaded her that in order to fully master it, she needed to learn how to fight while standing on the water. As a result, Yakumo entered the house with a bruised and wet Yakumo, while Naruto was essentially normal and undamaged. "How was the tree climbing experience, Sasuke-san?" asked the girl with the brown hair. Since Kakashi essentially spent the majority of the day teaching him about it, the Uchiha responded, "It's moving along fine, I'll master it pretty soon." Ignoring the Uchiha's faint glare, Naruto sat down at the table and started eating, saying, "Good for you." Looking at the three ninjas, Inari remarked, "Why do you people fight? Gato will just kill you. What the hell do guys even know? You don't know what we've been through. You have no idea how difficult life can be." After receiving intent to kill from all three genins, the child finished and then stopped talking. Naruto glared at the child, thinking, how dare this kid tell them of all people, that they don't know how hard life can be? How dare him? If this had not been a mission, he would have already jumped the child and shown him how difficult life can be. One lost his entire clan, the other's parents were dead, and the last one was a social pariah that was scorned and hated by everyone. Naruto, who had already lost his appetite due to that outburst, shook his head and got to his feet. Drawing attention from everyone, the blonde gave the child a fierce look before turning away and heading for the door, ignoring the calls to wait or return. Throughout Nami no Kuni's streets, having heard the kid's story from Yakumo, who had heard it from Kakashi, who had heard it from Tazuna. Big deal. Daddy died in front of you. At least he had a dad. Hell, he still had a loving family with him. He had nothing. Naruto sighed as he continued to walk, with no real destination in mind, simply trying to calm himself before he returns to the house lest he want to kill the kid. Eiko calmly and soothingly said, "Calm down, Naru-kun. I understand, but it's just that kid." In order to give the blonde some alone time, Eiko said, "It's okay now, Naru-kun, don't let what he said affect you. You know pain better than most people. The kid is just one of many who let pain trample over them. They throw away the chance of gaining strength to try to overcome pain. He is one of the many possibilities of what you could have become, Naruto." He took a deep breath and tried to recall what Eiko had told him. He closed his eyes and kept walking in an attempt to completely calm himself, but he ran into someone. A feminine voice said icily, "Watch it." As he glanced at the person he had bumped into, the blonde said, "Oh sorry, I wasn't paying attention." The girl was about 16 years old. With fair skin and gray eyes, she was about 5 feet 3 feet tall, with short brown hair that reached her neck and bangs that covered the majority of her forehead. She was dressed in a dark blue kimono tied with a blue obi underneath a red jacket that was white and left open 2 dark brown boots and a forehead protector bearing the kanji for Mew tied to her left bicep went with this. The girl said, "HN," as she turned her head away from the blonde and started to leave. The blonde uttered the words, "Oh God, not another one," in a low, nearly whispery voice. "What was that?" the girl asked, admiring the blonde Jinchuriki. He lashed out a little because he was still a little mad at Inari. "Oh, nothing. I was just saying how I hate people who act like a douche by saying HN. Let me guess, you have some kind of eye power that makes you special, don't you?" he said. The woman's eyes widened slightly as she examined the young blonde closely. She answered, "HN," the blonde said, "Gaw, you're doing it again." The girl turned around and began to leave, shaking her head. As he runs after the girl, the blonde exclaims, "Hey, wait, I'm not done talking with you," and reaches out to grab her by the shoulder. The girl turned around instantly and instinctively struck the blonde's chest with her palm, but her eyes widened before dangerously narrowing. The brunette was startled when Naruto released his grip on her shoulder and thrust his knife hand to block her palm strike. As he gazed at the woman who was now in front of him, poised to attack, the blonde responded, "What was that for?" In an attempt to roundhouse kick the blonde in the face, the woman lunged forward and leapt, but he ducked and avoided the blow. After giving the woman a quick glance, the blonde chose to respond by giving her a seisho no ya in the stomach. Just before landing, the girl caught the outstretched hand and threw the blonde over her shoulder. Flipping him over, the blonde broke his fall by landing flat on his feet after flipping in midair after glancing at his opponent. The blonde saw her vanish in a sudden burst of speed and then reappear directly in front of him as a fist struck his face, forcing him to back off a few feet. The blonde's eyes widened and he thought, that speed was on par with Ane when she's a bit serious. "Good punch," was the blonde's comment as he assumed his Shiryo stance, grinning and spatting out some blood. He was prepared for any attack that might come his way, but the girl vanished again. Naruto thought, "Aw crap," as he was now being punched and kicked repeatedly throughout his body. The boy searched frantically for a chance to counterattack, but the vast disparity in their speeds prevented him from doing so. Naruto briefly contemplated asking Eiko for assistance, but ultimately decided against it because he didn't want her to belittle him for his weakness in spite of their extensive training. When he was kicked in the face, he gritted his teeth and fell to the ground, rolling for a while. The girl's expression was one of complete disappointment as she gazed at her defeated opponent. Since the blonde was able to block her initial attack, she was hoping for a little more. She turned around, shook her head, and started to leave, but she stopped when she heard the boy getting up. The blonde calmly remarked, "You're strong, Ne-san," but he was grimacing in agony inside as the girl struck quickly and forcefully. "Oh?" the woman asked, somewhat impressed that the child had gotten to her feet because she was certain she had used enough strength to at least incapacitate a respectable ninja. The blonde then adopted a style that she recognized. She gave it some thought while she let the child attack. After examining the boy's fighting technique and determining why it appeared familiar, she grinned. The girl asked inquisitively, "Nanaya Kenha? Are you a student of Shiki?" And the blonde gave her a perplexed look. The blonde said, "Shiki? Who the heck is that?" As she continued to play around, hardly evading the boy's attacks while fending them off with punches, kicks, and palm strikes, the brunette said, "Never mind." Naruto moaned in exasperation as the woman skillfully sidestepped every one of his blows, seemingly dancing around them. The blonde makes the decision to step it up by abruptly speeding up his thrusts. The boy has potential, she thought. His attacks are accurate and good, but it seems like he doesn't know how to use senso, which makes it harder for him to get close to his opponents and really limits him to just the Shiryo stance. However, based on the way he attacks and the sudden extreme burst of speeds in his attacks, he probably knows how to use senso. The brunette thought it was time to end this, so she ducked to avoid Zanshu's attack on her neck before charging in and blocking the blonde's other hand with her left arm while pulling back her right arm, collecting chakra in it, and thrusting it forward, hitting the boy in the chest with her palm before releasing the chakra, creating a massive burst of power that sent the boy flying. Naruto moaned, feeling as though he had been struck by a truck. What the devil was a truck? Or, if Eiko was feeling grumpy by her despite the pain he was experiencing throughout his body. The blonde stopped complaining for a while and smiled before laughing. This was exactly what he needed to get his thoughts straight. The girl simply stood there, staring at him as though he were insane. Before turning back to the girl, he said to himself, "God, I needed that. By the way, hello, my name is Uzumaki Naruto, nice to meet you," he said. She turned around again and started to leave, saying, "Nice to meet you," the blonde exclaimed. "Hey, hold on, I was missing your name." As she left, she said, "I didn't give it to you, maybe I'll give it to you the next time we meet." Naruto gazed at her retrenchment and thought, "Suyoi Anana." The blonde stood up, flinching a little from the pain, and brushed himself off before turning around and returning to Tazuna's house, oblivious to the girl who gave him a sidelong glance. And were those whisker marks? Interesting boy. The girl thought this as she eventually turned her head away and started to walk again in search of a particular red-haired puppeteer. 1 week following the conflict with Zabuza, Naruto sighed as he sat on top of Tazuna's house at the moment. Tazuna was on the bridge with Yakumo, Sasuke, and Kakashi, leaving him to watch over Tsunami and Inari alone. In the event that they were attacked, recalling the brunette who kicked his ass thoroughly, Naruto pondered, "I wonder if I'll see that girl again." "Hey, nay, yes, Naru-kun. Do you believe that using your abilities would have allowed me to win that match? To be honest, I felt like that girl had a lot of strength, so you would have needed to unleash at least 5 or 6 of my tails. She was not your typical shinobi." Shortly after the little battle, the Biju found out about the blonde's loss and was not happy. To put it simply, Naruto had been in hell for the past few days. The past few days included 3 hours of intense physical conditioning in the early morning, an hour of training with his Tonto, an hour of Nanaya Ken practice, an hour of ninjutsu practice, an hour of fuinjutsu practice, and 5 to 15 hours because the mindscape's time moved differently and there were no hold bars. As 2 samurai who appeared to be thuggish were approaching Tazuna's house, Naruto thought, speaking of attacking. To hear what they were saying, he directed chakra to his ears. "Gato said we could do anything we want with the girl as long as we keep her alive," said one. "She is pretty good looking, mind if we have some fun with her before we bring her to Gato?" replied the other. The other person said, "Hell yeah," oblivious to a figure that had just landed in front of them. Naruto uttered the words, "Nanaya Ken, Nibun," while channeling Futon chakra on his arms and swinging both arms in a horizontal motion, severing both samurai at the waist. As he killed every thugs he encountered on his way to the bridge, Naruto remarked, "Well, I guess that's my job." Bridge. The bodies of several carpenters were on the ground, most likely already dead, but what caught Blonde's attention was the dense mist and ki coming from the area. Naruto arrived on the scene with a blank expression. The blonde shrugged and entered the battlefield through the fog. He said, half-heartedly, "Yo," as he approached Tazuna, who was standing in front of the elderly man who was standing up for him, and Yakumo. "So what happened?" The Kurama said, "Well, short version or long version?" Short one. "We came here, carpenters were dead. Zabuza came with Hunter Nin. Kakashi went up against Zabuza and Sasuke is getting his ass handed to him by the Hunter Nin inside that," she said as she pointed to the ice dome. "What about the longer version?" "Basically the same but has more stuff that makes the Uchiha look like a stupid and egotistical prick," was her abrupt reply. "Why aren't you the one fighting the Hunter Nin then? I know you're stronger than the Uchiha." She answered, "He jumped in before I could do anything." As he left, the blonde said, "Just stay here and protect Tazuna, I'll retrieve whatever's left of Sasuke, take care of him too." With a sigh, the blonde headed for the ice dome in time to witness the final Uchiha collapse to the ground, his body covered in protruding ice senbons. Despite a minor protest, Naruto was ordered to take care of Sasuke after creating a cage bunshin. After inhaling deeply, Naruto kawaramide with the Uchiha. The blonde said, "Hello Hunter Nin-san," as he emerged from the dome and switched places with Sasuke. "Cool mask by the way," he added, thinking about purchasing one later. As the masked ninja emerged from one of the numerous ice mirrors, he asked, "Aren't you angry that I killed your friend?" Play Nears. The Dark Colossus destroys everything. As he charged in and delivered a Seisho no Kai, which the Hunter Nin sidestepped and then punched the blonde in the face, the blonde remarked, "He's more of an acquaintance really." Naruto swiftly used his left hand to slap the approaching fist away while using his right to launch a Seisho no Ya that was directed at the nin's face. The ninja avoided the blow by cocking his head to the right, allowing his blow to go through. "Nanaya Ken. Kumiawase. San no Yajirushi," grinned the blonde. He said, "Konbo," as he rotated his body to give the nin face an elbow with his outstretched arm that was slightly bent at the elbow. "Zashu" was his next move, and he used the rotation's momentum to try to decapitate the opponent by putting his hand down his neck, but the ninja backstepped. "Maya," he exclaimed, letting go of his free hand and thrusting the knife forward, striking the Hunter Nin squarely on his mask, sending him tumbling backward a few feet as his mask broke, revealing a stunningly feminine face. As the hunter nin put it, "You're strong," as he charged in and started fighting the blonde. He questioned, "Are you strong because you fight to protect those who are precious to you?" The blonde said, "No, I am strong so I won't get hurt," as he deflected a couple of blows before kicking the effeminate man, sending him flying into one of the mirrors. As he entered one of the numerous mirrors, the nin remarked, "Why do you fight if not to protect? Fighting guarantees that you are going to get hurt?" Haku threw senbons at the blonde while jumping from mirror to mirror, saying, "True strength comes from fighting for those who are precious to you." As he started to consider what the masked man had said, the blonde left his position to avoid the senbons. Now that he knew Yakumo was looking after the Uchiha, he felt his clone dispel. The masked nin pronounced, "Sensatsu suisho," as he produced 1,000 senbons and aimed them at the blonde. Some hand seals were already being applied by the blonde. The blonde uttered the words, "Kase no domu," as he let out a gust of wind that interrupted the senbon's flight pattern. As he threw a huge fox-shaped fireball in the direction of the mirror where the hunter nin was standing, the blonde started going through some more hand seals. "Kaden. Kitsundai Hidama," he said. As soon as he saw the attack, Haku leapt out of the mirror and dove into another, continuing to hurl senbons at the blonde. With the hunter nin's senbon already striking him, Naruto clicked his tongue as his attack barely affected the now regenerating mirror. As he continued to dodge Haku's blows, he drew out some of the protruding senbons. In order to catch Haku as he was leaving a mirror, the blonde made a shadow clone and had it launch him into the air. The blonde punched the nin, sending him to the ground. After striking him in the face, his clone was about to burn the falling Haku after passing through some hand seals when the phony hunter nin threw 2 senbons, striking the clone in the neck and dispelling it. The blonde who landed in the center of the dome grunted in frustration as Haku landed and leapt into one of the mirrors. As he started going through some hand seals, the hunter nin sadly remarked, "Even though I dislike killing, you are too big of a threat to Zabuza-sama. Sorry, but I must take your life." "Hayaten. Hisatsu Hyoso," Haku uttered as he hurled enormous ice spikes from every mirror, directing them towards the blonde. His words were, "Sayonara Konoha nin," as he let go of the ice spikes and hurled them at the blonde. As he started working through some hand seals and tried his best to avoid the flurry of icicles coming from every side, Naruto thought, "Shit. Futon. Kamikaze," was the jutsu that Naruto released after pouring as much chakra as he could. The blonde said this, causing a small tornado to slow down inside the ice dome, slowing down the icicles that were about to impale the blonde. He completed another set of hand seals, though, so the blonde wasn't done yet. "Kaden. Hibarishi," he uttered, encircling himself with a ring of fire that, when combined with the divine wind, formed a flaming tornado, melting the ice spikes that were coming in. The masked nin asked the blonde again, "Why do you fight?" "Why do I fight?" Naruto pondered. For what reason did he fight? He was aware that he had gained strength to prevent further harm, but what was he fighting for? His freedom, to be sure, but was there a deeper reason for his fight? He could have simply left the moment Kakashi passed out from exhaustion, even though he still lacked sufficient money, but why didn't he? Did Shikamaru, Yakumo, and those kind folks at Ichiraku cause it? Was he overly attached? Or did he simply not know where to go? Well, so why does he fight at the end? Naruto gazed at the raging flames that still surrounded him. He unsealed his tanto and held it in reverse grip, thinking, "I have no answer for you." Naruto closed his eyes to clear his mind of all distractions. The blonde inhaled deeply before opening his eyes gradually as the flames subsided. Again, the world grew brittle. Haku's perspective. I gazed at the blazing conflagration before me as it gradually started to fade away. I pulled out some senbons so I could attack the boy with the blonde hair as soon as I saw him. Since I dislike killing, I tried to hit non-essential points, as I did to the first boy who attacked me. Unlike the first child, this one had unfathomable potential in his eyes, but I can see it. Those eyes filled with loneliness and pain. Just like mine did ages ago. Maybe we could have even become friends if our paths had crossed. The blonde was still closing his eyes when I threw him some senbons. To my surprise, the blonde used his tanto to destroy my attack and blocked it without even looking. I saw the blonde open his eyes while holding a senbon. I was momentarily distracted as I gazed into his blue eyes, which had a tiny magenta ring around the iris. It was stunning but strange, full of sorrow and suffering, but with enough strength to defeat them both. The blonde reappeared in front of me and glanced up into the mirror I was in before disappearing from view. He sliced through my mirror like it was made of paper, and I was just in time to jump out. I made an ice spike and threw it at the blonde, but he twisted his body, jumped on top of it, and used it to propel himself in my direction as we both hit the ground. It felt like time had stopped, and I was unable to move at all, but the boy was approaching me, So I leapt back, separating myself as I looked at him with his tanto already drawn. I watched the young boy run slowly but fluidly. It dawned on me then that I was dying. I closed my eyes and accepted my fate as the boy started attacking. I thought, sorry, Zabuza-sama, it seems that I can't serve as your tool anymore. Alongside Naruto attacked the phony hunter Nin, who had closed his eyes while charging in a tanto held in reverse grip. He squatted down and traced a line on the ninja's left calf. Ichi, he said. Ni, he added, drawing a line on the right calf of the ninja. Naruto said, San, while drawing a line diagonally from the left waist to the right thigh. As he changed his grip and traced another line from the left thigh to the right waist, Yan mumbled. Go, he said, drawing a vertical line through the hunter Nin's abdomen. Roku, he said, drawing another line between the man's shoulder and left arm. He added, Nana, and drew another line between the man's shoulder and right arm. Hachi, he said, drawing a line at the man's throat and retraction of his tanto. Q, was his final word as he thrust the blade forward, striking the ninja in the chest. Akudoraibu. Q by Kakusei. Sayonara Hunter Nin-san, was Naruto's whisper as the ice mirror domes started to break and fall apart, disappearing along with their dying user. The blonde turned off his eye and gazed at the now dead hunter Nin, saying, I'll give you my answer when we meet in the afterlife. Alongside Zabuza, when Zabuza swung his sword at the copy Nin, the man had to leap back just in time to avoid receiving a horizontal cut. Since the two had been fighting for some time, he was a little worn out and had cuts and bruises all over his body. They both appeared a little worn out, and the copy Nin was the same. Something in the side of Zabuza's eye caught Haku's dome collapsing, and he charged in, prepared to follow up his attack, though he grinned. Assuming Haku had won, his eyes widened a little at what he saw. The blonde from a week ago was standing tanto drawn with blood streaming down from it amid the falling mirrors. Following the blood trail, he came across a pool of blood with several sliced body parts strewn throughout. After that, he glanced up at the blonde and at the direction he was gazing. Then he noticed Haku's blood-stained face, eyes closed, and a dejected smile that had come away from him. As he pushed Kakashi away and struck the copy Nin with the blunt side of his sword, the missing Nin's vision turned red. The blonde was able to deflect the blow but was flung backwards as he charged and swung his sword. The masked Nin fell to his knees, gazing at Haku. Though he is too obstinate to acknowledge it, he saw the boy more as a tool than anything else. He trained and shaped the boy to be the one to carry on his legacy, treating him like the son he never had. All of that is now gone. Even though he had intended to give the boy his sword later, although he has been a ninja for a long time and has witnessed many deaths and taken many lives, the demon of the mist yelled loudly for the first time in his life as tears welled up in his eyes. Haku alongside Naruto. That's what it feels like to lose someone you care about and to cry for them. If this were to happen to me, I wonder if I would cry too when I die. Will someone weep for me? The blonde thought, causing his tenant to frown sorrowfully. She whispered, Don't worry, Naruto, I'll cry for you. I only hope you cry for me too. Kakashi appeared next to Naruto when the copy Nin saw the state of the phony hunter Nin. He asked, And Naruto, did you do that? As Zabuza rose to his feet, his hands smeared with his apprentice's blood, Naruto merely nodded. Gazing at the Konoha Nins, the swordsman of the mist clutched his sword. The man was prepared to charge in, forgetting his task of killing the bridge builder, until he heard his client's voice. Gato remarked, Oh, how disappointing. I guess the demon does not live up to his reputation. At least 100 mercenaries were standing behind him, armed and prepared to murder everyone. Zabuza roared in barely controlled rage, What the hell are you doing here? He stopped when he saw Haku's mutilated body and said, Change of plans. I was never planning on paying you. As you can see, my men here are ready to take you and your app. The man laughed aloud and said, Ha ha ha, I guess the boy's dead serves him right for breaking my arm. But he stopped when he felt a tremendous amount of ki directed at him. Gato's eyes grew wide as he watched the mercenaries behind him all have the same vision of his death play over and over in his mind. Play Kenji Kawai's Unmei no Yuru. Wait there, Gaki, Zabuza uttered as he charged at the small army while facing away from the Konoha Nin. All Naruto and Kakashi could do was watch in astonishment and mild admiration as the missing Nin swung into the crowd, effortlessly beheading and murdering anyone who stood in his way. By the time he reached the president of the trading company, Zabuza had already killed half of the crowd with his roars of 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. Before returning to finish the remaining hired guns, the missing Nin raised his blade and cleaved Gato in half. Even though he didn't survive the battle, Zabuza had enough stamina to turn around and approach the Konoha Nin as though he hadn't just killed 111 men. As Kakashi approached Naruto with his kunai in hand, prepared to defend the blonde, he yelled, "Your name is Gaki." Looking at missing nin, the blonde said, "Uzumaki Naruto." As he approached the blonde slowly, the missing nin declared, "I Momochi Zabuza, challenge you to a fight to the death." "There is no more need to fight, Zabuza," Kakashi stated, "your employer is already dead there." With a, "I accept," response, Naruto interrupted his sensei and pushed him aside, moving toward the weary and injured Zabuza. The blonde vanished in a flash of speed and started his duel with the demon of the mist before Naruto could even yell at him or stop his pupil. Kakashi was about to charge in while holding his kunai when he sensed a killing intent that was almost cage level, but he stopped. Zabuza remarked, "Hitaki Kakashi, do not interfere," as he deflected a blow from the blonde. As he and the blonde traded blows, he declared, "This is a duel between the two of us." When Zabuza swung his sword horizontally, the blonde ducked beneath it, moved in, and gave him a light slash across the stomach before rolling away to avoid the demon's next blow. As the blonde kicked off to the side and charged back to the demon, Zabuza emerged behind the rolling Naruto, both hands on his sword, swinging down and hitting the ground before becoming stuck in it. The demon's bandages over his mouth were destroyed when the blonde slashed him across the face, leaving a horizontal gash after taking the sword from the ground. The demon swung it again, this time striking the blonde in the shoulder, leaving a tiny cut before using a jutsu. Naruto went through some one-handed hand seals, but he stopped when the demon's fist struck his face. As he was put on the defensive and barely escaped the attacks, leaving cuts all over his body, Naruto said, "Tisk." With one hand by his side, the blonde saw the demon charging with a sword. Unsealing some shurikens from one of the seals in his right hand, Naruto leapt to avoid the attack and hurled them at the missing nin before the man charged in again. Zabuza deflected some more shurikens that Naruto threw after landing a few feet away. Zabuza managed to slit the ninja's arms a couple of times during their brief altercation, but it was not a serious one. However, the blonde was further harmed by the missing nin, who cut him several times. "Okay, with Aine's healing, I should be fine as long as I don't lose any limbs," Naruto thought, backing away as he evaluated the situation. "But even though this guy is obviously tired and damaged, he's still able to keep up with me. I can't win this if I don't use my eyes." He looked at Kakashi, who had his Sharingan out, with the side of his eyes as he dodged more of Zabuza's blows. He thought, "I can't use it while he's watching. I don't want Konoha to learn about my eyes." Before twisting his body to avoid the incoming blade and using it as leverage to kick the man in the face, the blonde charged and threw a knife, striking him in the gut. However, the blonde said, "He's getting tired and sloppier." As Zabuza's attacks grew more dependable, Zabuza lost his balance as the blonde sprang up from the ground and kicked the masked nin in the chest after Naruto dodged another blow and stabbed him in the thigh. This time he then ducked down and swept the man's legs. When the demon finally realized he was growing weary, he gritted his teeth in frustration. Zabuza blocked a stab that was intended for his chest with his sword, which the blonde avoided predictably but was still hit by a kick. He then launched his attack. "Don't hold back on me, Gaki," he exclaimed, pausing to rest for a moment. The demon screeched, "Use whatever the hell kind of attack it was you used on Haku," as the mist grew thicker. Zabuza was deliberately thickening the mist to hide the attack from Kakashi. Naruto scowled. "Why?" inquired Naruto. "Because I want to defeat you using your best attack," the demon exclaimed, running frantically in the direction of the blonde for a final pass. When Zabuza saw the boy's eyes change from a cerulean blue to an unusual blue with a magenta ring around its iris, he swung his sword in an attempt to cut the boy in half. "Ichi," he uttered as he permanently destroyed the Kabikirabocho by stabbing a point in it. The blonde stabbed the man in the liver with a "ni" statement. As he jabbed a point into the man's lungs, he muttered, "San. Yan," and then a stab wound to Zabuza's back. The blonde stabbed the man in the clavicle vein and said, "Go." He said, "Roku," as he stabbed the man once in the jugular. "Nana," the blonde said as he stabbed the man in the kidney. "Hachi," was Naruto's word as he pierced the man's head with a point. "Q," he said, finishing the stab wound to the man's chest with his bloodied tanto. "Akudoraibo. Q by Sasuyo," as his consciousness dwindled with his existence, Zabuza thought, amazing. That was the day the killer killed the last Yuki and the demon of the mist. With a flick of his wrist to remove the blood from his blade, Naruto uttered the words, "Sayonara Zabuza-san, may you meet Haku in the afterlife." Kakashi stood a little irritated because his vision was obscured by the dense mist. Then, as the mist gradually dissipated, he saw Yakumo, who who was helping Sasuke and Tazuna, approach him. They all noticed Naruto as they turned to face the mists. They stared at the boy covered in Hunter Nin's blood, his clothes a little torn and ragged, with a few senbons still protruding here and there. But what really shocked them was Zabuza's body on the ground, motionless and dead, with 8 stab wounds all over his body and his sword broken and shattered. Yakumo was stunned. Kakashi was in awe. Sasuke was in awe and for once had no malice in his heart. And Tazuna stared in surprise. Momochi Zabuza, the Kirigakure no Kijin, the same man who tried to kill a Kage, was just eliminated by the blonde with his eyes already deactivated. The blonde turned to face the group and approached them, prepared to explain what had happened. In Nami no Kuni, the team assisted Tazuna in finishing the bridge for an additional month. The blonde found the past month to be, to put it mildly, annoying. While he enjoyed being hailed as a hero and not despised by the public, he eventually grew weary of it and made the decision to become scarce through training or simply going into hiding. Both Eiko and Yakumo laughed at this, believing that he should just accept it and enjoy it while it lasted. When the team finally departed, they were praised as national heroes, even going so far as to call the now finished bridge the Great Naruto Bridge in recognition of his ability to speak both the Demon of the Mist and the fake Hunter Nin. After a while, the group returned to Konoha and informed the Hokage. Naruto turned around and departed with Sasuke and Yakumo. Following the first report, Kakashi also started to go, but he halted when he heard the Kage say, "Kakashi, stay behind." Sarutobi inquired, "What do you think of Naruto?" "He is strong, extremely strong. As I told you in the report, he was able to beat." "I'm not talking about that. I know about the boy's strength, but do you think he is a danger to Konoha or showed any intentions of wanting to leave?" "No, Hokage-sama, if he wanted to leave he would have left the moment I got overexerted myself the way I see." Although silent and a bit distant, Naruto is still a loyal shinobi of Konoha like his parents. Sarutobi grinned at Kakashi's remarks, suggesting that placing him under the copy nin's guidance was the right choice. The Hokage gestured for Kakashi to depart, saying, "Keep watching over him, Kakashi." Before he left, the man gave a nod. With a smile on his face, Sarutobi pulled out his pipe and took a few drags. "Minato, Kushina, it looks like despite what they did your son still loves this village." The elderly man was indeed senile a few months following the Nami no Kuni mission. Ground of Training 7. Uzumaki Naruto retaliated by punching the boy in the face after blocking another of the Uchiha's blows. As you can see, Sasuke was somewhat humbled by the fact that, despite unlocking his Sharingan, he was unable to defeat Haku. Following the mission in the waves, the Uchiha's pride was damaged, and he underwent a significant transformation. That day his ass was handed down to him in record time because he was so excited that he unlocked his Dujutsu and challenged the blonde right away because of his conceit. There will always be stronger people than Uchiha, and this brought him down to earth. The Chunin was able to persuade Sasuke that constantly acting like an ass is only impeding his ability to gain strength. After spending the entire day conversing with Kakashi, his teammates might be willing to help him get stronger if he was just kind. Naruto and Yakumo started to realize that Sasuke was genuinely becoming less of a jerk. After a few more C-rank missions, the Uchiha swallowed his pride and asked Naruto and Yakumo for assistance in becoming stronger. Yakumo consented to teach the Uchiha some genjutsus, but Naruto simply walked away. However, Yakumo eventually persuaded Red bribed Naruto to attempt to assist the Uchiha with a sai. The blonde finally consents to spar with the Uchiha. The Uzumaki criticized the Uchiha's stance during their first spar, which caused the Uchiha to lose it and engage in a full-on brawl with the Uzumaki. After 4 days in the hospital, Sasuke came to understand the disparity between their strengths. He was furious at first, but after giving Kakashi's words some thought, he was able to calm down. Now, he viewed the blonde as a kind of opponent that he needed to defeat before he would even try to battle Itachi. With a sly smile, Sasuke threw another punch at the blonde, who again blocked it. Although he didn't want to acknowledge it, the Uchiha had a good time over the last few months. He eventually became attached to his team after spending time and growing stronger with them. Yakumo, who served as a mediator between him and Naruto, was consistently composed, mature, and calm. Even though the Uzumaki didn't care much for him, his one-sided rivalry with the blonde was getting better than it had been. In a way, he viewed Naruto as his rival and was now open to working with both Yakumo and Naruto. Naruto initially claimed he didn't want any of that, much to the chagrin of the blonde. When he found out, however, after Yakumo practically pleaded with him to be a better team player, the blonde gave in and occasionally even sparred and gave advice to the final Uchiha. Eiko was laughing at the blonde the entire time, but the Uchiha were unaware of it. "Too slow," was Naruto's comment as he slapped away another Uchiha punch as he delivered a lightning-fast knife thrust that struck the Uchiha in the chest and sent him reeling a few paces back. He said, Don't rely too much on your eyes, it doesn't mean shit if you can see it if you can't react to it. Tisk. The Uchiha uttered at the charge. The blonde grabbed the leg as Sasuke leapt and threw a roundhouse kick at his face. The Uchiha aimed for the blonde's arm, twisted his body, and kicked with his free foot. He let go after hitting the blonde. The Uchiha backflipped a couple of times as soon as he hit the ground, narrowly avoiding a barrage of knife thrusts from the blonde's hands in an attempt to repel the blonde's attack. The Uchiha defensively crossed his arms over his body and directed additional chakra toward them. Even though striking the Uchiha was somewhat therapeutic for him, the Uzumaki halted his attack and leapt back because he didn't really want to kill the man. Not yet, at least, Naruto reflected. Sasuke hurried in again, fists drawn, and dismissed his fatigue and pain. Thinking it might be worse, the Uchiha extended his knee to try to knee the blonde in the face, but the Uzumaki swept him in his legs and punched him in the chest, sending him a few feet back. The blonde ducked as he threw the punch. Too slow, Sasuke. You need more physical training. Improve your speed and physical strength before you even consider fighting someone of my caliber or higher head-on. With a, "I know," statement, the Uchiha charged again. One Hakate Kakashi exclaimed, "Yo," as he emerged through Shunshin in the center of the training area. Naruto exchanged a, "Hey," as he deflected another kick from the Uchiha. In response, the raven-haired teenager twisted his body as before and kicked the blonde in the face, missing when she ducked. "HN," was his response. Sasuke was able to block in time, but the boy counterattacked right away by putting a knife hand to the Uchiha's chest. Kakashi said, "Would you guys stop? I need to announce something," but Naruto surged in and attacked Sasuke, who was frantically dodging the blows. As he turned to face Yakumo, who was observing from the side, Kakashi's perspiration stopped. Would you stopping the two?" the kunoichi asked, shrugging as she went through some hand seals. She exclaimed, "Genjutsu Shibari." As Sasuke and Naruto were frozen in midair, ready to kick one another, both the kunoichi and the Jonin obviously laughed when the two boys struck their faces on the ground. Kakashi started speaking, and Yakumo shook off her genjutsu. All of Kakashi's genin were staring at him when he said, "Now that I have your attention." He said nonchalantly, as though it were not a huge deal, "I just nominated you guys to the Chunin exams. Go to the academy tomorrow, room 301 around 10 am. Kakashi would have perished there if glares had the ability to kill. After he got up, his body was sore and bruised. "Why didn't you tell us beforehand, sensei?" "Because if you did, you know I wouldn't have asked Naruto for a spar the day before the test," explained Sasuke. "Oh, I'm sorry," Kakashi uttered. The Uchiha gave him a glare before he turned to face his teammates. "I'll see you guys there tomorrow," he said, getting a simple nod from the blonde and a "yes" from Yakumo. After leaving the training area, the Uchiha went home to rest. Yakumo said to the blonde, "So, want to get something to eat?" He answered, "Sure," and the two started to return to Konoha, ignoring Kakashi, who was still there. The Jonin called out, "Wait, I didn't say you were dismissed yet, hey." But all three of his students turned to face him and said, "Did you say something?" At the same time, making the Jonin look bad. He believed that they were indeed his students. Konoha's streets. The blonde simply nodded when Yakumo asked, "So you excited for tomorrow?" "Is there something wrong, Uzumaki-san?" The blonde replied, "Nothing, just thinking about stuff." Since she persuaded the blonde to tutor the Uchiha, he appeared to be more aloof and uninterested in her. Yakumo sighed. She felt bad for making Naruto do something he didn't want to do. Even though it was for the team's benefit, his current behavior wasn't exactly helpful. She was unaware that the blonde was currently speaking to Eiko. "So, tonight you want ninjutsu and fuinjutsu?" the Biju inquired. "Yeah, I nearly perfected that Kodai Fuin, but I still need to expand my ninjutsu skills a little bit because it might help me on the tests tomorrow." "Alright, Naru-kun, as always, thank you." A pull in Naruto's sleeves jolted him out of his reverie. He turned to see a dejected-looking Yakumo. "Yes?" She startled the blonde by asking, "Are you mad at me?" "Why do you think I'm mad, and what would I be mad at you for?" "Well, you seemed really cold recently, and that started around the same time I convinced you to help Sasuke." Around that time, Naruto made the decision to intensify his training, which required him to spend more time in the mindscape and largely ignore Yakumo. He thought, "Aw crap." Looking at Yakumo, he thought, "Troublesome." "No, I'm not bad, I've just been thinking about a lot, and I mean a lot of things." "What kind of things, Uzumaki-san? Has that teenage hormone of yours popped out and finally decided to take advantage of me?" she said with seriousness. Eiko and Yakumo both laughed when the blonde simply tripped and face failed. "You are too naive, Naru-kun. Stop talking." As he and Yakumo turned a corner to reach Ichiraku, the blonde got to his feet and saw a strange scene. A boy wearing what appeared to Naruto to be cat-like pajamas with something tied to his back was standing in the middle of the street, his face covered in makeup. The Hokage's grandson was being held by the teen by the nape of his neck. Naruto noticed a few more figures when he looked around. In addition to the auburn-haired boy who was standing on the three hiding with those eye bags and the enormous gourd strapped to his back, there was a blonde girl with sandy blonde hair tied in 4 ponytails, wearing light purple clothes, 2 young children, and a Suna protector around her neck. As he and Yakumo moved forward to try to stop the Suna nin from doing something foolish, Naruto simply waved at the boy who was hiding in the tree. "Yo, makeup boy." The boy looked at the newcomers on the scene, first the blonde and then the brunette, and said, "It's war paint, damn it. What the hell do you want? Can't you see I'm disciplining this brat?" Both the female blonde and the makeup boy froze when Naruto casually asked, "Oh, so you were planning on disciplining the Hokage's grandson?" The girl said to the boy who was now known as Konkuro, "Konkuro, put the kid down, now." He started to say, "Shoo," but was cut off when the blonde's fist struck his face. Yakumo blushed a little when he said, "Sorry, I'm kind of in a hurry here, I'm starving, and it's rude to make a lady wait." "Why you?" exclaimed Kakuro as he began to reach for whatever the devil was in his back, only to be struck in the face once more by the blonde. Naruto addressed the Suna Kunoichi, asking, "So can we go now?" "Yeah, you can, I'm sorry," she said, picking up her foolish brother's now conscious body. Naruto turned around and called for Yakumo, who was chatting with children, saying, "Well, then see you tomorrow at the exams." He wasn't particularly surprised when a voice asked, "What is your name?" from behind the blonde. "Isn't it rude to ask for names without introducing yourself?" replied he. "Subaku no Gara," was the voice's response, and he gazed at Naruto, who was already leaving with Yakumo. "According to the Ichibi Jinchuriki, you didn't give me your name." The blonde said, "I'll tell you next time, Ichibi," as he and Yakumo departed, leaving 2 Suna genins with wide eyes and one still unconscious. Yakumo inquired, "What was that about? Honestly, I don't know and I don't want to know." Yakumo abruptly stopped in front of a store that caught her eye as the two were just 2 minutes away from Ichiraku. She yelled, "Uzumaki-san," to stop the walking blonde. "Huh? What is it, Kumo-chan? Can we go in here before we go to Ichiraku?" Naruto merely glanced at the store, which was a straightforward mask store. With a shrug, he followed Yakumo inside. Naruto and Yakumo spent some time exploring the store. They saw a range of masks, including the traditional Anbu masks, masks featuring the faces of well-known ninjas, and even one featuring Kakashi's face in front of it. Then Naruto paused, gazing at 2 masks, one frowning with sorrow and the other grinning with delight. When Yakumo saw this, he snatched up the 2 masks. "Don't you think masks are cool, Uzumaki-san?" "They're not bad." As she alternated between the tragedy and comedy masks over her face, she remarked, I like masks. You can put them on and hide your true emotions, act happy while you're sad, or act sad when you're actually happy." "So do you like masks as well, Uzumaki-san?" The blonde grinned and said, "They're not bad," even though his friend was occasionally quite odd. Yakumo simply looked at him and grinned. She handed the tragedy and comedy masks to the store owner and paid for them, saying, "I'll take these too." With a "here" gesture, she removed the tragedy mask and handed it to the blonde. "Huh? Why are you giving this to me?" As she left the store, she remarked, "Because for some reason, I think you're always sad inside." Naruto gazed at the frowning mask and asked, "Huh?" Naruto shrugged and walked out of the store after putting the mask into one of his body's seals. After that, he and Yakumo went to Ichiraku, where they ate for an hour before splitting up. The following day, after waking up at 4 in the morning and performing his morning routine of different exercises, Naruto stopped at 7 and showered before breakfast around 9 o'clock. He left his apartment and headed for the academy. Yakumo heard the words, "Ohio Uzumaki-san," as he glanced at her and nodded in return when the Uzumaki saw his team standing in front of the academy. "Morning," was uttered by one Uchiha, compelling the Uzumaki to reciprocate. "So is everyone ready?" asked the Uzumaki. The blonde kicked the academy door open as he and his 2 teammates entered. After receiving nods from his teammates, when the 3 reached the 2nd floor, they discovered several students trapped there due to some basic genjutsu. The Uzumaki gave Uchiha a fierce look and threatened to kill him if he mentioned anything about genjutsu. As the 3 of them ascended to the 3rd floor, the Uchiha nodded. A voice from the 2nd floor said, "I challenge you, Uchiha Sasuke, to a duel." The 3 turned to see a boy with bowl-cut hair in a green jumpsuit. Naruto made the Uchiha nod, saying, "Ignore him. Sasuke, the exams are starting in 20 minutes, and we don't have time to waste." He was halted when the blonde figure at the top of the stairs disappeared and then resurfaced in front of the genin. Is this how Uchiha respond to a chow? The Uzumaki released some ki and forced the boy to back off, saying, "We don't have time to waste, so unless you want me to kick your ass, you'd better shut up and leave." "Good," said Naruto, not noticing a pair of pupilless white eyes staring at him as he started to ascend the stairs again to reach his teammates who had already left. He said, "Interesting," as he walked up to his still trembling teammate. As the mop-haired boy and a girl with her hair in buns headed to the third floor, the boy said, "Let's go, Lee." Kakashi exclaimed to his group, "Yo." As his genins entered the exam room, the Jonin remarked, "It's good to see you all here. Good luck, and remember to watch each other's backs." The key of everyone in the room drowned the three of them. Naruto observed that the man from yesterday, the Inuzuka heir, and the Yamanaka heir were all aiming high amounts of ki at him. Was he concerned? No. Naruto simply watched what transpired while leaning against the wall close to the rear of the hallway. A man with round glasses and white hair came up to his old classmates who were reuniting. "Knock knock. Who's there?" To the blonde's surprise, she responded, "A creepy-looking Kusa nin looking at you at 9 o'clock. Even after being attacked by a mummy, Naruto discreetly turned his focus to a woman standing in a corner with a group of Kusa nins, continuing to ignore the Konoha nin who wore glasses. "Is it me or, yeah, that man is hiding it pretty well, but he smells like a snake and a killer. I know of only one snake user, and it's not her, so." Naruto thought, "Fuck, language Naru-kun. Why in hell is Orochimaru in here? Why don't you ask him?" "I'm not sure. Yes, it's a good idea to approach a missing nin in an S-class and ask him to say hello and ask why he's here. Wait. Orochimaru is fixated on learning all the jutsus or something like that was written on his bingo book page. Shit, he's pursuing the Uchiha. Your team is a real trouble magnet. Before you know it, a group of S-rank Missin's nins will be chasing you. Avoid jinxing it. However, should I notify Konoha? You decide, Naru-kun. Well, I'll just wait and see how this works out." A man in a black coat with a bandana was standing in the center of the room when he heard a puff of smoke appear. Naruto was seated next to the Hyuga heiress, but he was surprised when the man said, "My name is Morino Ibiki and I'll be your first examiner. Now shut up and listen." He then waited for the other prompters to direct all the genins to their seats. Ibiki started outlining the rules and the written tests, and Naruto listened. He stated that cheating was prohibited, that you and your team would be eliminated if you were caught 5 times, and that the final question would be asked with just 20 minutes remaining. Soon after, he started distributing the exam sheets with the assistance of some clones. The man said, "You have an hour start," as nearly everyone started responding to their tests. As they frantically attempted to cheat and prayed that they wouldn't be caught, the foolish people started praying to whatever gods they wanted, while the intelligent ones, like Naruto and Yakumo, just answered the questions. The other main characters, on the other hand, simply cheated because, apparently, nobody ever notices the Hyuga and Uchiha using their dojutsu, a dog barking out answers, or a giant doll in place of a proctor. The blonde thought, "Yep, the best proctors ever. It's no wonder Orochimaru got in here so easily. These people are retarded." As he completed his test, Naruto simply sighed and gave the Hyuga heir sitting next to him little to no attention. As soon as the allotted time had passed, Ibiki began warning them to stop right away or else they would never be able to take the test again. Naruto continued to ignore what was going on, thinking, "Wow, this guy must be the Hokage in secret if he can make a stupid law like that." "You all pass," the man said after a few more minutes. A large banner that was now hanging over the room was created when a round object crashed into the windows, interrupting the man as he attempted to explain the test's meaning. Mitarashi Anko, the attractive and unmarried one. When Naruto saw the banner, he thought. Naruto said, "Ah crap, it's Habine," as he dodged a kunai that was aiming for his head behind him. The Chunin proctor wasn't as fortunate. "Hey Anko ne," Naruto said, glancing at the figure in the middle of the room. She was a woman with pineapple-shaped purple hair in her early 20s. She was dressed in a mesh bodysuit that accentuated her curves and a tan overcoat. She had on a dark orange miniskirt as well. Anko and Naruto met in Training Ground 44 when Naruto was training and hunting the animals there for food, but that's a story for another time. "Hey Gaki," she said, since the two had known each other for a long time and were social outcasts. Even his teammates Sasuke and Yakumo were staring at him for Kami's sake, but he ignored their looks and said, "Hey," in return. The girl used a shunshin to disappear after saying, Well, then I'm the examiner for the second part of this test. Mitarashi Anko, come to training ground 44 in 30 minutes. Be late and you're disqualified. Naruto walked to his team and shook his head, promising to tell them how he knew the instructor after the tests. He then pointed them in the direction of training ground 44. Ground of training 44. Yakumo was running through the notorious forest of death with Naruto and Sasuke. Anko arrived at the scene and gave the Chunin hopefuls an explanation of the test's rules before day 5. Locate the opposite scroll from yours. It could be an earth or a heavens scroll. Then make your way to the tower in the middle of the forest while attempting to avoid dying. The majority of the newbie genins shishti to themselves when she said the last part, which made them laugh. As she leapt from tree to tree, Yakumo said, "So we've been running for a while now. Uzumaki-san, Sasuke-san, do you have any plans?" Now that Team 7 was in the middle of the forest, which was supposed to be home to enormous animals, they either didn't come across any of them or fled. As soon as they saw them, they appeared to be terrified of something. As if it were the easiest thing in the world, Naruto answered, "We find another team, take their scrolls, then head to the tower." As he pulled out a kunai, the Uchiha responded, "HN. So finally sensed it too, Sasuke? Split up!" exclaimed Naruto. His team obeyed right away and avoided a strong wind gust that was coming their way. The Kusa-ni, who emerged atop one of the trees, exclaimed, "Oh my, that is quite surprising."
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.